Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Board of Environmental Safety meeting. I'm Courtney Bailey, Board Specialist, and today's Board Clerk. Today, we are joined by the following Board of Environmental Safety staff persons: Swati Sharma, Executive Officer; Shayna Avila, Staff Engineer; Sheena Brooks, Operations and Outreach Manager; Lauren Chandler, Ombuds; Gregory Forrest, Board Counsel; Evelyn Nuno, Board Specialist; Linda Ocampo, Senior Staff Engineer; and Marcus Raymond, Senior Environmental Scientist. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Your continued participation is acknowledgement that you are being recorded. Today is March 20th, 2025 at 9:31 a.m. and the meeting is now called to order.
Thank you, Courtney. Welcome, everyone. Courtney, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Member Bhatia?
Present.
Member Brostrom?
Here.
Member Gomez?
Here.
And Vice Chair Strass-Hacker.
I am here.
Wonderful. We have 4 members present and a quorum is established. I will now review some logistical items. On the language selection slide, you will see that today's hybrid meeting is being held both in person and remotely via phone and Zoom. For those joining us on Zoom, please select either English or Spanish as your preferred language option by clicking the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. If you don't see the icon, you may need to update your Zoom application. Next slide. If anyone experiences connectivity issues with Zoom, you can call in for either English or Spanish. The phone numbers are provided to you now on the slide. They will also be provided in the Zoom chat and posted to our website. Next slide. Agenda times may fluctuate to accommodate agenda items. Meeting materials are available on the registration table outside the council chambers at the entrance of the room. They can also be found on our website at bes.dtsc.ca.gov. To protect everyone's virtual space and networks, the QA function will serve as our chat feature. It will be used for individuals that are experiencing technical difficulties or are unable to make verbal comments. Please begin your comment with "please read aloud" if you wish to have your comment read out loud during the public comment session. To ensure that all board members are fully present and focused on today's presentations and discussions, they are not reading or following along in the chat or the Q&A. All participants will remain muted until a Zoom host unmutes them once recognized. Only presenters, videos, and screens will be shared. Please note that for Agenda Item 6, we will be introducing the DTSC's Hazardous Waste Management Plan, hearing number 1, which is scheduled to begin at approximately 11:40 a.m. We will be utilizing a numbered card system to facilitate the public comment period for our in-person commenters. Please see Sheena at the front of the room here or Evelyn at our registration tables to receive a numbered card if you would like to make a comment for agenda item number 6. And that will be the order in which we call you up to the podium to speak. Our public forum comment period, agenda item 7, for those items not on the agenda, will be held at approximately 1:40 p.m. If you would like to express your comment in writing, you may submit your comment via email to bes.info@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. And that concludes the introductory review for today's meeting. I will now hand it over to Vice Chair Hacker for agenda item number 2.
Thank you, Courtney. And thank you for those here and joining us on Zoom. This is the second day of our 2-day hearing in Fresno, and we thank the City of Fresno for accommodating us and for its courtesy. We have a couple of very important items to cover today and look forward to the extent of public participation that is characteristic of our meetings. We're going to begin this morning with our DTSC colleagues with a hazardous waste facilities Operating Permit Decision Status Report. The legislation that created our board, SB 158, required the Department of Toxic Substances Control to make certain permit decisions within 3 years of the legislation being enacted, or no later than July of 2024. For permit decisions that were not made by that date, DTSC was required to issue a report explaining why the permits were not issued by the statutory deadline. The board received DTSC's report, the Hazardous Waste Facilities Operating Permit Decision Status Report, last October. And today we're going to review, discuss, and vote on the proposed schedule for 2 of those facilities. So we're voting on the schedule, not on the merits of any other facet of these. One, the Clean Harbors facility at Button Willow, and secondly, the Chem Waste Management facility at Kettleman Hills. So this is, as I said, not a discussion on the merits of the pending facility permit decision. This item for our board is solely focused on the proposed schedules for these upcoming permit decisions. Each facility has its own dedicated formal public comment period to receive comments from the public. Shana Avila, our BES staff engineer, will provide us with an introduction and with our staff's recommendations for these 2 facilities. Representing DTSC is Mujda Firuz, the supervising hazardous substance engineer. Each of the 2 facilities will be presented and voted on separately. Mujda will present DTSC's proposed schedule for each facility. We'll have board discussion for items directed to either our staff or to DTSC. We'll then hear public comment on each facility's proposed schedule, and the board will then take a vote on each proposed schedule individually. Again, we're not asking for public comment on the merits of the facility permits, since today we're only considering the proposed permit schedules. And with that, I'd like to turn to Shana.
Thank you, Alexis. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin with the continued permit decision hearing, I'll be providing a brief introduction on the statutory requirements for expired permits as laid out in Senate Bill 158, as well as the purpose of the report on permit schedules issued by DTSC. This will provide some important background information as we move forward with today's hearing. Prior to board's vote, I will also be sharing the technical team's recommendations to either accept or modify the proposed schedules for the permits of the facilities we will be hearing today. Let's get started. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 158 imposed permit decision timelines for operating permits expiring before January 1st, 2025 and on or after January 1st, 2025. The Department of Toxic Substances Control, DTSC, must issue a final permit decision within 3 years of the permit expiration or within 3 years of the effective statutory date of July 12th, 2021, whichever is later. The proposed permit schedules we are hearing today expired before January 1st, 2025. Next slide, please. If a decision is not made by the deadline, DTSC is required to issue a permit decision status report within 60 days to the board, detailing the reasons for delays, progress to date, and the proposed schedules for finalizing each permit. DTSC must also request that the Board of Environmental Safety, BES, schedule a public hearing to present the report. It is the board's responsibility to evaluate the report and either accept or modify the proposed schedules through a majority vote at a public hearing. Next slide, please. In October and December of 2024, DTSC issued reports explaining why certain hazardous waste facility operating permits were not issued by the 3-year timeline set forth in statute. The reports address the current status of work completed for each facility, actions and information still needed, and DTSC's proposed schedule for issuing the final operating permit decisions. 7 facilities were included in the October report, and 1 facility was included in the December report. For today's hearing, DTSC will be presenting on Clean Harbors Button Willow and Chemical Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility. I would like to note that the following 3 permit decisions were issued. FiberTech PTI was issued on February 28th. Clean Harbors Wilmington was issued on March 11th. RoChem was issued on March 14th. And so these have all been taken off the agenda for the board to review, and they will not be subject to vote. Next slide, please. Next, I will be presenting the technical team's recommendations to either accept or modify the proposed schedules. This will follow by DTSC's facility presentations. After DTSC's presentations, there will be board discussion, followed by public comment and the board vote. I want to remind the public that comments should be specific to the proposed schedule and not on the merits of the permit itself. Next slide, please. On behalf of the technical team, we support the proposed schedules for Clean Harbors Buttonwillow and Chemical Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility. The technical team has reviewed the October Hazardous Waste Facilities Operating Decision Status Report, including reasons for delay and remaining actions and information needed. We believe the schedules are realistic, efficient, and align with the remaining requirements of the permit process. Therefore, we recommend the board to accept these permit schedules as proposed by DTSC. Now I'll hand it off to DTSC to present on the facilities we are hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you. And we welcome Mujda Firuz.
All right, members of the board, my name is Mujda Firuz. I'm a branch chief in the permitting division at DTSC. And today I will be presenting on the continued permits and their status. As you may recall, at the last board meeting, our division chief, Wayne Lorenzen, introduced, this is wordy, the Hazardous Waste Facilities Operating Permit Decision Status Report. And yes, I agree, we need to find like a short name for it. Yes, there's no good acronym. And he presented on 3 of the facilities included in that report. We also shared with you that DTSC's permitting division has embarked on a journey to process improvement in 2013 by having a third-party consultant conduct an analysis of the permitting process. That led to the development of an extensive permitting enhancement work plan that addressed the need for increased staffing, implementation of standardized processes, and an improved management structure. Shortly after that, permitting invested into and developed 13 Lean Six Sigma green belts and 1 black belt within the division, all of whom have made impactful improvements to our permitting processes. The result of all of these efforts has put us on a really great path of continuous improvement within the permitting division, in which all of our staff approach their work with the mindset of how can things be made better. The timeline for processing permit applications has been significantly reduced and improvements are ongoing. And so Alexis and Shayna did a great job of summarizing Senate Bill 158 and the requirements of the report, so I won't go into that. The reports that we submitted included 8 continued permits. Wayne reported on 3 of them at the previous meeting: Chevron Environmental Management Company, EcoBat, and Veolia Azusa. Since then, we are happy to share that the permit decisions have been issued for 4 of the continued permits, 4 of the 8 continued permits. So that's Veolia Azusa, RoChem, Clean Harbors Wilmington, and Fibrotech. This reduction in number means that these very complex facilities now have stronger, more enforceable permits that incorporate the latest technologies and are more protective of human health and the environment. And so today I will be presenting on 2 of the remaining permit decisions from the report: Clean Harbors Buttonwillow and the Chemical Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility. But before I jump into the remaining permit decisions, I'd like to give a summarized overview of the permitting process, of just a reminder of everything that goes into the work that we do. I know Wayne went over some of this in detail last time, so I'll just give a short refresher. The permitting process consists of 5 different phases: the pre-application phase, the administrative review phase, the technical review phase, the draft permit decision phase, and the final permit decision phase. The goal of the first phase, the pre-application phase, is to allow for direct communication between DTSC and the applicant before they submit a permit application. The key components of this phase include a reminder letter that we send to the applicant, letting them know that their permit will expire in 3 years, as well as a pre-application meeting that we hold at the facility. At this meeting, DTSC and the applicant discuss the hazardous waste processes and review what things will be required in the permit application. The goal is to ensure the applicant is well informed and knows what to include in the application before they submit it to us. And hopefully that will reduce the need for notices of deficiency later on. The second phase, the admin review phase, begins once DTSC has received a permit application. During this phase, DTSC issues a public notice to the public and other agencies to share that we have received an application. Also during this phase is when permitting reviews the application to make sure that all of the required parts have been submitted, to deem it administratively complete, and then the more detailed technical review phase can commence. That next phase, the technical review phase, is the most resource and time-intensive phase of the permitting process. The completion of this phase heavily relies on the applicant's submittal of a permit application that meets all applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. DTSC determines whether that application meets those applicable requirements and is protective of human health and the environment. And if we see deficiencies, we share that with them by way of notice of deficiencies. The next phase, the draft permit decision phase, starts when permitting issues the draft permit decision with a public notice for public review. And depending on the stakeholders and community's level of interest, permitting may hold a public meeting and a hearing where we provide a presentation on the draft decision and accept oral public comments. But during the public comment period, that also happens during this phase, we accept comments online, via email, and by mail. The final permit decision phase is the last phase of the permitting process. During this phase, DTSC reviews and considers all public comments and prepares a response to comments document. DTSC releases a final permit decision and finalizes CEQA documents. Appeals of permit decisions are then administered by the BES. And so let's jump into the meat of the presentation. Okay. Oh. All right. Clean Harbors Buttonwillow, which I will refer to as CHB for short, is an existing permitted hazardous waste disposal facility located approximately 6 miles west of Buttonwillow in Kern County. The facility was first permitted in 1983 and then renewed in 1996. CHB is currently operating under the 1996 permit, which expired in 2006. The permit renewal application was deemed administratively complete in 2005, which allows the facility to operate on a continued status under the current permit. CHB is permitted to operate 2 hazardous waste landfills, 1 treatment facility, 2 storage tanks, 1 truck wash station, 1 drum handling area, and post-closure activities for 2 closed hazardous waste landfills. The Cal EnviroScreen percentile score for the Buttonwillow community is 96%, and the score at the facility is 81%. The permit renewal application proposes several changes to the operations, including the construction of 3 new treatment units to replace older processes. CHB is not seeking an increase in capacity, but they are applying for authorization to install new treatment units for better, more protective operations. In the report that we submitted, we shared a very comprehensive list of the reasons for delay of this permit decision, and today I'll just highlight some of those reasons. DTSC, in making a decision, needs to consider impacts identified in the updated EIR that was being created by Kern County. That EIR was finalized at the end of October 2024. During the technical review phase, the groundwater monitoring program was completely revamped to account for changing conditions and increased protections. And key components of the complex operation and monitoring programs, such as the waste analysis plan, human health risk assessments, and the ambient air monitoring program were carefully reviewed. When we submitted the report in October, we were in the technical review phase. I'm happy to share that since then, we are very, very close to completing the technical review phase and will soon move into the draft permit decision phase. The next steps will be to finalize the draft decision documents, issue our draft decision, and open up the public comment period. We are asking to amend the proposed final decision date to March 15th, 2026. That will allow us the time needed to prepare the supporting documents for our draft decision, develop and implement public engagement that will be customized for the Buttonwillow community, and thoroughly review and respond to the public comments that we may receive. And I also wanted to note, I know I shared that this permit was expired in 2006, and that's the current permit. But since then, throughout the years, we've made a lot of changes to this facility, which include, I have some of them listed here that I just got an update on that I wanted to share with you guys. And those include changes to the groundwater monitoring program, an ambient air monitoring program, along with health risk assessment requirements. And we also enhanced the maintenance and cleaning of their treatment units. So we have made improvements since then. Just wanted to note that. And on to the next one. So the Kettleman Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility, which I will refer to as Kettleman facility, is an existing permitted hazardous waste transfer, storage, treatment, and disposal facility located approximately 3.5 miles southwest of Kettleman City. This is the third renewal application for the Kettleman facility. The current DTSC operating permit was issued in June 2003 and expired in June 2013. It was administratively complete, and that's why they've been able to operate on a continued status under the current permit. The Kettleman facility is permitted to operate 1 hazardous waste landfill, 1 treatment facility, 2 surface impoundments, 1 truck wash station, 1 drum storage unit, 1 PCB flushing and storage unit, and post-closure activities for a combined closure area of old waste management units. The Callan Virus Green percentile score for the Kettleman City community is 92%, and the score at the facility location is 77%. The draft permit proposes more protective measures to facility operations, including the addition of 5 new groundwater monitoring wells, 28 new soil gas monitoring wells, and upgrades to their air monitoring program. The draft permit also proposes more robust procedures for waste analysis. If approved, the new permit will allow the facility to operate for up to 10 years with a condition to review the permit at the 5-year mark to determine if any changes or additional conditions are needed. In the report that we shared with the board, we shared a detailed list of the reasons for delay, and I'll just highlight some of those for you guys. During the permit application review process, several independent activities were carried out, and these include the finalization of a Class 3 permit modification to expand 1 of the land disposal units, a Title VI settlement agreement and its associated tasks and engagement, a civil rights analysis, and a Kettleman City vulnerability evaluation using Callan Virus Green data. There was also a detailed review of the complex operations, which resulted in changes to the groundwater monitoring program, new waste acceptance procedures, and new post-treatment verification methods, amongst other improvements. DTSC conducted additional and very thorough CEQA-related activities, including circulation of an environmental document analysis and later addendum for public review. And finally, DTSC has conducted numerous engagement activities and outreach to stakeholders throughout the permit application review process to gain input. We are currently in the final permit decision phase and are reviewing and preparing a response to all of the public comments we received. Next steps include completion of phase 2 of the civil rights analysis and issuance of our final permit decision. We are asking to amend the proposed final permit decision date to December 1st, 2025. That will allow us the necessary time to wrap up our review and consideration of the public comments, as well as finalize the civil rights analysis phase 2. I thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Mujda. I'm sure there'll be some questions. What I'd like to do now is turn to board discussion on the Clean Harbors Button Willow facility. After board discussion, I'll invite public comment on the Clean Harbors Button Willow schedule. And following public comment, the board will vote on Clean Harbors Button Willow schedule. What we'll do next is then turn to the Chem Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility. We'll have board discussion, public comment, and then vote on the schedule. And again, the purpose of this report was to, I would say, writ large, bring about current permit schedules in effect. And by highlighting those that were overdue for reissuance, I think many of the goals, in my personal opinion, are being achieved by bringing some of those older permits up to date and currently issued. So we have just a few left to handle. And with that, I'd like to invite board discussion on the Button Willow schedule. Any? Member Bhatia.
I have a question for DTSC, if I may.
Mujda, do you want to stay near? Because we doubtless have questions for you.
Thank you, Mushta. I have a question about the EIR done for Button Willow. Was the EIR triggered by the renewal application, by the permit holder? What was the duration, and can it be accessed through DTSC's website?
The EIR was actually not triggered by our requirements, but it was through Kern County. I think they wanted to expand some of their municipal waste activities. And so Kern County is the ones that initiated the EIR. They're the lead agency. And I believe, I'd have to check to see if we have a link to it, but if not, we can make sure that we provide that.
Do you remember when we took the tour and they showed us where that new municipal landfill cell was being created? That's the subject of that CEQA document led by the county.
Yeah, and during the process, we coordinated with them throughout the process to make sure that what we would need to be included in the EIR would also be included. So they did a really good job coordinating with us.
Thank you.
No further board discussion? What I'd like to do is invite any public comment. Today, I'd like to take public comment for those in the room first and those on Zoom second. So let me turn to our board clerk, Courtney Bailey. Do we have anyone interested in commenting who's in the room?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We will open the floor for public comment regarding the proposed schedule for Clean Harbors Button Willow. And again, we're only taking comments on the proposed schedule that was presented today. If you would like to comment on this item, I ask that you please go ahead and line up now. There's a X on the floor behind the podium that you can line up if you would like to make a comment for Clean Harbors Button Willow proposed schedule. Okay. Seeing none, we will now move to our Zoom participants and check with our Spanish interpreters for those participants that are in our Spanish Zoom room. Anyone that would like to make a comment on the proposed schedule for Clean Harbors Button Willow, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Thank you so much, and confirming no comments in the Spanish room as well. Thank you very much, Aldo. So that concludes our public comment period for the Clean Harbors Button Willow proposed schedule. Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you. We're ready to take action on the proposed permit decision schedule for the operating permit for the Clean Harbors Button Willow facility. The permitting staff anticipates the final decision will be made by March 15th of 2026. Our BES staff feels this is a reasonable schedule and recommends to us as a board that we approve the final permit decision schedule. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
It was moved by Member Bostrom and seconded by Member Gomez. Any further discussion? Will our clerk please call the vote?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. There's a motion and a second. Board members in support of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes for Clean Harbor's Button Willow schedule.
Thank you. And thank you to the DTSC team for your presentation. Let's turn to the Chem Waste Management Kettleman Hills facility. I'd like to open it for board discussion. Member Bostrom.
Yeah, I was hoping, given the community engagement on this particular facility, if you could provide a little bit more information on, the community engagement timeline and how you're going to, be responsive to the community comments, the concerns, and how that's impacting the timeline here.
Sure, that's a great question. So during when we first public noticed our permit, our draft permit, we had two public meetings. We had one where we focused on what we shorthand call the Cal Virus Screen Report, and we shared information from that and took feedback. And then we had our a week later our more typical meeting where we shared details of the draft permit and took public comments. So we received a good number of public comments, and we're working through those now. And that's why we want to make sure that we have enough time to work through those, address all of the needs that are listed in those comments. And the other piece, our outreach doesn't stop. We had shared that during our civil rights analysis phase 2, we would conduct interviews of our stakeholders. So our plan is to conduct interviews of key stakeholders and the members of the community that were present and commented on this draft decision. So that's to come, and that's why we need that little bit of extra time.
I'm just maybe one follow up in terms of the interviews, and I think we asked this last time too, because you don't know what you're going to receive and what information you're going to gather through that process. Just wanting to make sure that there's time built in, in order to make changes or course correct if that needs to happen. So that's always something that I'm conscious of is, when you're still in the information gathering phase, particularly around community concerns, wanting to make sure there's enough time to be responsive to whatever comes up.
Yes, absolutely. And we're also doing other community outreach. We're working with CRLA to meet with community members, and specifically from El Pueblo. So we haven't stopped our outreach. Just because our meeting ended doesn't mean that we've stopped our outreach. We welcome any continued feedback. If anyone wants to have more meetings with us and have more discussions or provide further comments, we're always taking them.
Go ahead.
Just a follow-up to Ingrid. So that's great that you're doing more active outreach. But I just want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly, that sounds loud. Is there enough time embedded in the timeline to reflect some of that outreach, some of the information that you're gathered to amend the permit? Is that calculated?
Yes, that's calculated.
How much is that?
We are asking from now until December to address all of that. And so it's not that we're beginning that process. We reviewed our comments last year, and since then we have been combing through them, understanding them, looking at what changes that may impose on our final decision. So it's a continuous process.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further to my right? One request, Mujdat,
Yes.
as we are ready to turn to public comment, we have board meetings scheduled for the remainder of this calendar year. As the permitting division may need to adjust the dates that we are voting on and have voted on, would you come back to us with any updates as those dates may change?
Yes, that is our plan. Absolutely.
Thanks so much. With that, I'd like to open this item on Chem Waste Management Kettleman Hills schedule for any public comment and turn it to our board clerk, Courtney Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We'll open the floor for public comment regarding the proposed schedule for Chemical Waste Management, Inc., Kettleman Hills. And we are taking comments on the proposed schedule that was presented today. We're going to start with our in-person participants. And if you would like to make a comment today, please go and come up to the podium or line up on the X on the floor. Thank you very much. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, this is Miguel Alatorre, Executive Director of the Unidos Network, Kettleman City Local Community Group. And on this particular item, I'd maybe want to see the board push back the permitting process so that we can take account some of the community concerns more accordingly, particularly amongst the cumulative health impacts. I think that's really, really important that we have a solid grasp and understanding of how that's weighed within this decision when it comes to the permit. I think it'd be really interesting to see any biological assessments that could be done or should be done in the community. And so those are things that I'd like to see as something that the board would take into consideration in pushing this decision back. I know that the industry needs to do what it needs to do, but it'd be nice to see maybe a decision push back to 2026 instead of December. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else that'd like to speak in person, please come up to the podium. Thank you so much. Please state your name and affiliation, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Good morning. My name is Brian Cadena, lifelong resident and co-founder of Unidos Network. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today. I'm here to express concerns about the proposed final permit decision for the Kettleman Hills Hazardous Waste Landfill and urge the board to consider delaying this decision until key assessments are properly conducted. Kettleman City has long carried the burden of hosting the largest hazardous waste landfill on the West Coast. While the landfill has been a fixture on our community for decades, the health and environmental impacts have not been fully assessed to make an informed and responsible decision. I believe it's critical that we address several gaps in the review process. First, a community health impacts assessment is essential. Kettleman City is exposed to multiple pollution sources from landfill emissions, diesel truck traffic, and pesticide drift to poor air quality from nearby highways and industrial facilities. We've seen higher than average rates of birth defects, respiratory issues, and cancer. A comprehensive health impacts assessment would help clarify the full scope of risk and guide better protections for residents. Second, an economic impact assessment is needed. Other landfill hosting communities like Buttonwillow have received financial reinvestment from industry. Kettleman City, however, has not benefited in a meaningful way from the economic activity generated by waste management. An economic assessment would help identify opportunities for reinvestment and economic growth that align with the needs of our community. Third, updated biological testing and mitigation plans are necessary. The Kettleman Hills landfill is located in an ecological sensitive area home to to Kettleman City residents. Ensuring that biological impacts are carefully studied and addressed would protect not only the health of the community, but also the ecosystem. I want to be clear, our goal is not to block progress, but to ensure that decisions are based on the most complete and accurate information available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to make a comment in person? Wonderful. Please state your name and affiliation, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mark Felton here with the Unidos Network Incorporated, based out of Kettleman City. I'm actually proposing that this permitting review process be delayed until 2026 at the minimum on the basis of a lack of a quantitative analysis of cumulative health impacts, studies of impacts on the local economy, disincentivizing other industries from moving into the area, and biological impacts. I'm a certified data scientist and a true community organizer, and I go door to door and speak with residents about these concerns personally. I would like to thank Ingrid Brostrom for vouching for us on the Board of Environmental Safety and encourage the rest of you with the Board of Environmental Safety to reach out to us at Unidos Network Incorporated so you can hear more about these community concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other in-person commenters that would like to make a comment? Please make your way up to the podium. Okay. Seeing none, we will now move to our public commenters on Zoom who would like to make a comment on the proposed schedule for Chemical Waste Management, Inc. in Kettleman Hills. Please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. And Aldo and Jeanette, our interpreters, if you could make sure that if we have any commenters in the Spanish room, that they have an opportunity to comment as well. Okay, I am not seeing any virtual hands raised, and thank you for the confirmation, Aldo. No Spanish comments at the moment. So that concludes the public comment period on the proposed schedule for Chemical Waste Management, Inc., Kettleman Hills. Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you. Before we take action on the proposed schedule, I understand Board Member Rostrom has some follow-up questions. Mujta, could we trouble you to come to the microphone?
Thanks. So just one follow-up question, given the public testimony. We heard some requests for a cumulative health impact analysis, and I'm wondering if you can give a little bit more information on the civil rights analysis and how much of that would cover the requests that we heard around the cumulative impact analysis, or how else you may have addressed this concern around cumulative health impacts.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So the way that we address this is through our Cal and Virus Screen report that we completed and shared with the community. It's not necessarily part of the civil rights analysis report.
Can you say a little bit more on what the civil rights analysis will be addressing?
So we had phase 1, and we had an outside law firm conduct an assessment of our practices and how we've done our work throughout the permit review process. And they assessed if we were following civil rights laws. And they also gave us a long list of recommendations. That was the end of phase 1. We looked at the long list of recommendations, and we made sure that we tried to the best of our ability to follow those recommendations during our draft permit phase process, where we did the outreach and the meetings and the mailers and all the public outreach. And so what phase 2 is going to do is take a look at, how did we do? Did we do it right? Were there things that were missed? Is there something that we should have done that we didn't do that's important? Raise any flags? And so that's really the purpose of phase 2.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks. Please go ahead.
Can you speak a little bit about any biomonitoring work that has been completed in the community through OEHA or anything that's planned to come up?
There's no biomonitoring work that we've completed, and there's none that we plan to complete.
This might be a question that you may or may not be able to answer, but I'll ask it, and perhaps we can figure out who within DTSC is able to speak more, which is whatever biomonitoring is done through OEHA, how is the prioritization completed of which communities are identified for biomonitoring? How do you prioritize, and what the schedule might look like for the next year or so?
You mean how OEHA selects which
exactly
communities?
How OEHA selects? Yes,
I'm not sure. I could try to. We have partners at OEHA that we can reach out to and report back.
That would be great. If I'd like to understand what that collaboration looks like between DTSC and OEHA, if they are indeed doing biomonitoring, and if DTSC is able to provide recommendations of communities of concern and flag them to OEHA, maybe there's a potential partnership.
Sure, that's great. Yeah, we will reach out to our partners at OEHA.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
If the OEHA biomonitoring information can come to our board executive officer, we would ideally be able to post it on our website for the public in the course of this year, because there's a lot of work you're going to be doing. So
sure, we will look into that and report back to you through Swati. And I'm not taking notes because I have someone else taking notes for me. So we are noting all of this. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mujta. Are there any further comments among board members? Member Bostrom.
More of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
Um, given that we've had a request for a delay, I mean, I would want to make sure that if we did push it back, it would be because there'd be something additive. The one thing that it does come to mind, though, with a December deadline, oftentimes those December deadlines or decisions are very difficult for communities because of the holiday season and things like that. So I always look with some skepticism around December deadlines. So I do wonder if, even pushing it back by just a little bit to allow, the community to, participate with some of those deadlines after final decision making, whether that would, kind of, if there would be concerns with maybe pushing it even just a little bit so that you're not hitting up against that holiday season. But given that this particular site, there's a lot of community interest.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that in the past where we've pushed it to January to allow for, a little bit of that cushion and make sure that everyone has access to the decision. So that's not unreasonable.
Before one of our board members may make a motion, we could offer the flexibility of our upcoming meetings, April in Berkeley and May in Los Angeles. And if the DTSC team wants to update us and have us reconsider a different schedule for these facilities or anything else, we invite you to come back and present that to us. So per what you just heard, if things look like they may take a different turn, we can tackle that in a public setting with you. And we really appreciate your continued support to us in the last 3 years of having these meetings.
Yes, thank you. And this is all great feedback. We'll circle back with the team and we'll reach out if we need to make any changes.
That sounds good. All right. I think folks, we're ready to take action on the schedule that's before us, which I note is already, it had been going into this meeting. It had been September of 2025. As of today, it is, the Button Willow schedule changed. So we've already dealt with Button Willow. Let me organize myself a little bit better. We're ready to take action. Actually, we haven't. Did we close public comment?
Yes, we did close the public comment.
And we had a bit more board discussion, and now I think, go ahead.
I mean, I do wonder, given that one of our rules is modifying and given that there seems to be they're amenable to a January date, whether we would want to at least consider moving it back by a month so we're not hitting the holiday season.
I think we should let them have some internal deliberations and we can take it up next month if the department envisions something different. But I leave it to the pleasure of the board. I think we should take action on the Kettleman Hills schedule. Is there a motion?
Can I ask a clarifying question before we do a motion?
Yeah.
My understanding of the continued permit schedule is that we adopt the schedule that's proposed and knowing that as the work continues between DTSC and the community, if the schedule needs to change, that DTSC would bring it back to us and we would consider modifying the schedule. So reconfirming, and I'm seeing some nods. So if that is my understanding.
I don't think that's my understanding because we are asking on the schedule for Kettleman to be reconsidered. So that should not be something that will, unless there is a motion to include it and we can go through the voting process. But I think there's interest by some board members to reconsider that schedule.
I think what Member Bhatia is saying is that in the future, not just this one facility, but the other facilities, if there's date changes, then DTSC will bring it in front of the board, an explanation as to why there's been a delay and what that new date is. So that's the expectation.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So basically, I'm thinking
I was
principles level, outside of Kettleman, that's our general agreement is we proceed with the schedule that's proposed, but know that it's important to maintain the quality of the permit and the public engagement. So in the course of those activities, if more time is needed, we will reconsider the permit schedule. Okay. Having said that, it sounds like for this particular facility that the community members want a little bit more time. So is there a motion to make, given that we are going to reconsider the schedule the next time they meet?
It is up to us as board members to make a motion, to second it and to amend it as needed, and then to take a vote.
Okay. I could attempt to make a motion, unless Ingrid, you want to?
Why don't we have a motion, a second, and then we will
All right.
discuss whether it needs to be amended.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I move to adopt the continued permit schedule for Kettleman Hills facility with the modified date of January 2026 or after, based on DTSC's recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or amendment? Would you call a vote?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. There's a motion and a second for a January 2026 or later date. Board members in support of that motion, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Courtney. I want to thank the DTSC team and our staff for working on these schedules, and thank the public for their engagement in this. I'd like to take a moment to allow folks to stand up, to come and go as they may wish. And then in just a minute, we're going to take item 4, our board member reports on different items. So a 1-minute break just to stand up because we've got a long day ahead of us.
Welcome back, and welcome back to those on Zoom as well. Madam Vice Chair, a quorum is maintained and we can continue on.
Thank you so much. This brief part of our agenda are our board member reports. Under Bagley-Keene, we can meet as a board in public with you. Other work that we do, we can only do with 2 members as a work group or a subcommittee. And with that, I'd like to go into our first 3 board member updates. First, EJAC with Georgette and Ingrid, then Exide with Georgette, and then fee structure with Ingrid and Sushma. So let me turn to Georgette and Ingrid. Only Sushma. Okay.
Okay, I can start on EJAC. So as we all know, the EJAC committee has been, the council has been established by DTSC. There was a round of meetings that we had, all board members had separately to meet the members. And we're still waiting on DTSC to have a follow-up with the subcommittee to figure out the implementation and moving forward. So that's still pending.
And I'll just add, at the introductory meeting, I think something that came clear in our meeting, was a need to provide further information to the EJAC on our roles and responsibilities as the BES as opposed to DTSC. So doing a little bit more landscape. And so it's something that we've offered to do and asked to have some more time to present a little bit more information about our board and how the EJAC should interact with us as well as our authorities.
Plus, we have a role with the DTSC director in approving a work plan, do we not? And yesterday, the suggestion that the EJAC might be able to help us a bit on some of the metrics that may be of interest. All right, Georgette, Exide.
So on X side, continue to participate in the working group. And one of the items that happened was there was a ETech meeting that happened, the community meeting that happened in the community, and virtually, I participated virtually. There was just a report on the cleanup status. There is a wish to get a better understanding on how the cleanup is going to continue, being that is running out of money. So I know DTSC, Katie was there, and there is a commitment that they're going to be working on identifying other monies to continue the cleanup. So that's in the works. EPA was also participated during the meeting, and they continue to evaluate the site to be designated as a Superfund. So that's still work that is continuing. And what else? So those are kind of like the highlights on X side.
Thank you. Fee structure, Sushma.
All right. On fees, we have two different tracks. Too loud? Okay. So the first track, it's a reminder that the first track is about ensuring that DTSC remains fiscally solvent. What that means is we have to make sure that DTSC has all the funding it requires to run its programs and services, and so does the board. So as part of track one, what we've historically done is every year we work closely with DTSC's finance department and lead Brian and his team to understand what are the appropriated funds, what revenues has DTSC received through CDTFA, and evaluate what gaps might exist between the appropriated amount and the received revenues, and use fees as a mechanism to fill any gaps that exist. So that's historically been what we've done, and we will continue to do. This is part of the board's responsibility. So again, this year we expect to do the same exercise. We're working closely with DTSC's finance team. The key question we were attempting to address is whether or not we could pull in the schedule for any outreach that we do to stakeholders to give them a heads up about fee adjustments and so on. But it turns out that because the governor's decision on the appropriated amount comes out, or the guidance comes out in May, we're really unable to, with a high degree of confidence, start outreach and provide signals to the stakeholder community about what implications to fees would look like. So again, this year, we expect to do a lot of outreach, but the outreach will start in May once we have more clearer guidance on what the appropriate amount will look like. So again, all of this is track one, which is what are the implications to fees. Like last year, we're going to look at the gap, but we're also going to look at the loan repayment. DTSC has a $40 million loan that it needs to repay. So we're going to look at the loan repayment schedule. We're going to look at the gaps we need to fill, and we're going to look at what reserve we would like to maintain as a board. Together with DTSC, we will come up with some scenarios like we did last year and propose the scenarios. So that's track one. Track two, we're working with board staff to look at all of the fee-related mandates laid out in SB 158, and those mandates extend beyond the annual fee setting cycle that we participate in. Some of these get to more foundational elements of like what other programs or we want to consider to improve the fee structure overall. So as part of this, I'm going to call it the long-term research phase. There are a few work streams that BES staff have initiated. One example is the work that UMass Lowell has initiated to do some broad thinking about what fee streams DTSC could consider, what other governments in the US have done, and where can we draw inspiration. So there was a phase one completed by DTSC. We as a board have reviewed the phase one and have provided recommendations on where we would like to invest by way of phase two of this work. So we've started the write-up, and now we are working through the contracting mechanism to extend this piece of work. So all of this is to say there's kind of work happening behind the scenes. It will take a while for us to bring something to the rest of the board and to the stakeholder community to react to, but these are the two tracks we're running.
Thank you. Georgette, ombuds.
On ombuds, continue to work with Lauren, who's been great in really launching the program. So it's officially working now. And I know that she's been working on communicating some of the issues that are being reported by the public, working with the DTSC staff, where you've been having conversations on how to put her work in a way that comes back to the whole board and at what level. So that's something that we're having discussions on to be able to communicate really what are we hearing and how to not overshare a lot, but also just keep the full board informed. So that's something that we're working through right now.
Thank you. SB 673, Ingrid?
Not too many updates there. The track 2 fact sheets came out, and I believe there may be some progress made on the third fact sheet, but we have not yet received it. So something that we're looking forward to reviewing.
The board members have been briefed on track 1, schedule, the concept of changing the violation scoring procedure, which will in due course take the form of a proposal from DTSC, a more formal proposal. And we'll continue to work with DTSC on the so-called track 2, the 3 information sheets that would lay the framework for future regulatory proposals by DTSC. Shall we switch to Santa Susana Field Lab Working Group?
We have a meeting next week with DTSC and Parents Against SSFL to talk about upcoming community public engagement events. So that'll be next week.
Thank you. Department of Defense, I'm the SB 158 liaison to the Department of Defense, and there's an annual meeting that Cal EPA convenes of the various boards, departments, and offices to talk about DoD issues. This happened on March 4th in Sacramento, and I participated remotely. A couple things I just wanted to highlight on a positive sense in the long-standing dispute between the state of California and the Department of Defense for the Oakland Army base. That dispute is at last resolved, and the cleanup can continue, and it had to do with PCB values. I'm really glad to see that that had happened. And then with regard to DTSC specifically, we have had semi-annual meetings to work on various issues related to hazardous waste permit renewals. Many of those issues have been successfully resolved. There's probably a whole new schedule of permit renewals that will take up when those meetings resume. But meanwhile, the concern that DoD raised has to do with how they handle universal waste and how that is manifested, what record keeping they use at the various military installations in California for how to record universal waste. And so those are going to carry forward into a discussion with Mandy Bain and Wayne Lorenzen, and we will revive the semi-annual meetings. I'd be glad to report on that in the future. I'll turn to our executive officer if there are any other updates that she would like to make.
No, I think you all covered them, so nothing to add. Thank you.
Very well. We're going to move to agenda item 5, and I'd like to review and act upon the meeting minutes from our January 29th public workshop and our January 30th BES meetings. Is there any discussion? And if not, may I please have a motion and a second?
I can make a motion to adopt the minutes.
Moved by Board Member Gomez,
I second.
seconded by Board Member Bhatia. Courtney?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Board members in support of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. The motion passes unanimously for the January 29th, 2025 public workshop and January 30th, 2025 meeting minutes. The approved meeting minutes will be posted to our website in the coming days, and we will be adding that information into the chat Zoom feature. And Madam Chair, it is now 10:38. Would you like to call for a 45-minute break?
If you'd just give me a moment to confer on our schedule, we're expecting a fairly large number of public comments. We want to be able to hear and accommodate everybody within a 2-minute comment timeframe during that item. And let me just confer about when we would take an imminent break and when we would resume. So if you give me a moment, I'll be right back.
Thank you.
We're going to take a midday break and we're going to start at 11:25. I'm hopeful to claw back those minutes and use them wisely for the rest of the day. So let's be ready to go at 11:25. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, everyone. As Vice Chair Hacker stated, we will take a break and return at 11:25. As a reminder, if you wish to comment for agenda item number 6 on the hazardous waste management plan, please get a number card from Sheena up at the front of the room or Evelyn at the registration table outside of the room. Other than that, we will see you all at 11:25. Thank you so much.
Courtney, do we have a quorum?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a quorum with 2 of our members making our way to the dais right now. Thank you.
We will now continue with the first of 3 hearings on DTSC's hazardous waste management plan. These hearings are your opportunity to share your comments and recommendations before our board votes on the plan at our July 2025 board meeting. Our executive officer, Swati Sharma, will provide a brief introduction, and then Mandy Bain, DTSC's Director of the Hazardous Waste Management Program, will also share some opening remarks. Ryan Dominguez, to her left, Supervising Hazardous Substance Engineer for DTSC, will present us with an overview of the plan. Swati?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So as stated, next on the agenda is the Hazardous Waste Management Plan. The plan is the first of its kind mandated by SB 158 and developed by the Department of Toxic Substance Control. The plan is a roadmap for improving how hazardous waste is managed in California and serves as a source of information to guide state and local hazardous waste management efforts. Today's hearing will be the first of 3 public hearings, which will be held in various parts of the state. We'll have the second hearing on April 24th in Berkeley, the third hearing on May 15th in Los Angeles. And the purpose of the hearings is to receive comments from the public on the draft plan and to use these comments to help shape the final version of the plan. We anticipate that the final plan will be brought before the Board of Environmental Safety for a vote scheduled for July 2025 in headquarters. However, this also depends on the amount of feedback we receive. We encourage all of you to reach out to the board and to DTSC to provide your feedback on this plan. I'm going to hand it off now to Board Member Brostrom and Board Member Bhatia to also provide some of their remarks on the hazardous waste management plan.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We were both members of the subcommittee on the hazardous waste management plan. And so I just want to provide a little bit of context from the board's perspective, as well as the various roles that we play here. So, this plan comes from the mandates of SB 158. And SB 158 is very clear in terms of the roles and responsibilities. So SB 158 directs DTSC to prepare both the hazardous waste management report as well as the hazardous waste management plan. And SB 158 does give the ultimate approval authority to the board. And so I've mentioned this in a couple of past meetings, but it is actually this board's responsibility to look at what DTSC has produced and make an ultimate decision on whether it meets the mandates of SB 158, as well as some of the intent. And I just want to cover a couple of the themes that have come from the subcommittee and some of the feedback that we have provided DTSC staff. And a lot of this feedback will at least guide my assessment of the plan moving forward. So first, we really wanted to see a clear setting of goals as required by SB 158 that will drive long-term planning and management of hazardous waste in the state. We also provided feedback to ensure that the plan meets the requirements of SB 158 because it does delineate about 13 different factors and criteria that have to be included in the plan. And so the board's responsibility will really be looking at whether or not the plan ultimately meets the mandates of 158. We want to see a plan that is data-driven and aligned with the report. And we want to make sure that the plan establishes and advances a long-term vision to reduce the impacts of hazardous waste generation and disposal in the state, and also driven by health and equity, equity and health protection. That was a focus of SB 158. And finally, we have provided guidance around our concerns about the use of alternative management standards for non-RCRA contaminated soils that would allow for disposal in municipal landfills. We are concerned whether it's appropriate to include in the plan, whether it meets the criteria of SB 158, and particularly around, really being clear on the problem that we're seeking to resolve in the plan, as well as whether it meets safety and protection mandates that we want to see in our long-term planning for hazardous waste management in the state. So that's a little context of kind of where we've been coming from as a subcommittee. We appreciate the staff reviewing our feedback. And I'm sure it's not coming as any surprise to our DTSC staff. We've had a number of conversations around this, and it certainly is going to be guiding our assessment as we look, to our duty to ultimately be the approver of the plan. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Sushma.
Thank you. In addition to what Ingrid has covered, first of all, as a subcommittee, we are very thankful that we are at this place where we have a plan to discuss with all of the stakeholder communities and solicit feedback. As you all know, there were a series of workshops that were organized by the DTSC team. So also thankful that there was extensive outreach done through the course of the development of the plan. The core areas that Ingrid covered earlier, we provided a report out at the December board meeting where we did a deep dive on the feedback that we as a subcommittee provided to DTSC and are looking to DTSC to incorporate aspects of this feedback into the plan. So today we will be listening for those things. Just as a recap, as Ingrid mentioned, we are looking for a plan to establish a vision and provide a prioritized list of actions that the state or DTSC is recommending and taking to drive impact. We would like to see the impact and the actions grounded in the data included in the hazardous waste management report that was released a year and a half ago. We've included other aspects in our recommendations around data fidelity. We want to make sure collectively we're closing data gaps through the work that this plan will advance. And we are looking to specifically make sure that source reduction, innovation, and the overall state leadership around hazardous waste is maintained through this plan. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Mandy.
Hi, good morning, everybody. As was stated, my name is Mandy Bain. I am a newly appointed Deputy Director for the Hazardous Waste Management Program for here at DTSC. I was briefly introduced yesterday, but for those who didn't hear it, my background is in public health. And I would say my career's been dedicated to health and environmental equity. So I do want to start by thanking everyone who's here in the room and on the Zoom. I'm really looking forward to your comments and making sure that you know that we want to engage with you related to our plan, because we can't we can't innovate and get towards that more sustainable future that we all want without everyone coming together to put that work in. So that's community, it's industry, it's our sister boards, departments, and offices like the Water Board and like Cal Recycle. So I had a few more things, but I think everything has been said about the statute that requires us to put this plan together. So we start with that, but I think it's really important to highlight that the plan is seeking that visionary goal of supporting a circular economy, looking for sustainability, and looking to reduce the impacts of hazardous waste on our communities and our environment. As was detailed in the 2023 report, the hazardous waste landscape has and will continue to evolve. We're likely to have a growing number of lithium-ion batteries, for example, and we're going to have to contend with that growing waste stream there. We have a lot of waste from California that is disposed of out of state, and that means that there are other communities that are potentially less protected, and also probably the creation of more greenhouse gas emissions related to transportation. But we really need to also encourage innovative recycling and reuse and developing those new technologies. I have started to hear the concerns about contaminated soils and the issue of non-RCRA soils. I want to reiterate what Director Butler stated yesterday, that this draft plan does not change any rules or regulations. It's not going to change the way that we handle contaminated soils and non-RCRA soils. And any changes that do come about because of the evaluation that we're proposing are, a long ways off. And there's going to be a lot of research, analysis, and also engagement and communication along the way. This is really our first step. And I'm really looking forward, like I said, to that engagement with you all. I know we have the same goals. We all want hazardous waste regulations that are protective of our health and our environment for generations to come. And in order to reach that, we need holistic solutions to sustainably manage California's hazardous waste. That means generating less waste, innovating waste reuse and recycling, and using wisely our waste disposal infrastructure. And again, all of that will be done without sacrificing public health and the environment. So I want to thank you for your attention to our presentation today, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Dominguez.
Thank you, Mandy. I want to introduce myself. My name is Ryan Dominguez. I'm a supervising hazardous substances engineer for the Hazardous Waste Management Plan Unit at DTSC. I'd like to say first, thank you to all that have been following along and have participated throughout the development of this draft plan. We've been deeply immersed in this project for the past few years, and the engagement has been very nice to be a part of, and I'm very happy people have been coming and sharing with us throughout that time. Now, I'm going to share a lot of detailed information today, but I'm going to do my best to break it down as clearly as I can. I aim to provide an overview that encourages everyone here to read the full draft plan and have enough understanding to want to provide feedback. Public input has been key from the beginning of this project, and I want to ensure that the engagement continues. As we've been talking about, California's draft hazardous waste management plan, which I'm just going to refer to as the draft plan, is a comprehensive planning document to continue to protect California's communities from environmental harm through ongoing advancement of the state's complex hazardous waste management system. The draft plan provides a foundation for the department to achieve goals around waste reduction, support of a circular economy, and sustainability through proven and scientific practices. I also want to emphasize that this is a draft of the plan. What is laid out here are recommendations, and the plan itself does not outright change existing laws or regulations. Up on this, on the slides themselves, oh, let me go back to, sorry. There's a QR code up here if folks haven't been able to locate a draft of the plan itself. You can scan the QR code and it'll take you to our webpage that has the draft plan there and links to the appendices. Okay, so I'm going to walk us through a bit of an agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background. We've chatted about it a little bit already. Talk about the process that we went through to draft this plan. Then we'll talk about where it's coming from, provide a summary of the hazardous waste management report that we released in November from 2023. And then we'll get into the plan itself. And we'll cover next steps again. I think Swathi laid them out a little bit earlier about those next steps, but I'll recover those at the end. I'm going to start with a little background. So in 2021, Senate Bill 158 was approved, and it updated Health and Safety Code 25135, hazardous waste management reports, which provide information for hazardous waste management plans. Both the reports and plans must be completed every 3 years. Over the past few years, we've been working to develop this first hazardous waste management plan. The process to develop this plan began with research for and publication of the hazardous waste management report in November 2023. The findings in the report were used to inform the goals and recommendations in this draft plan. DTSC held 6 workshops during the reporting period and 10 more on focus topics identified from the report and by interested parties that requested additional information. We took the report information and feedback received during the 16 workshops and used it to help develop this draft plan. The public will have several opportunities to provide additional feedback before the 2025 plan is voted on. And as required, a new plan will be released every 3 years. This will allow California's hazardous waste management program to adapt to changes in waste streams, innovations in science and technology, and identify resources that are needed. I'll start with the report summary. As a reminder, you can access the report here on our webpage. We recommend reading the full report and reviewing the appendices of the report. It's long. It has a lot of data in it. Data from the report and your comments were used to help inform and develop this plan. I'm going to start with some key findings from the report. First, the number of generators has almost doubled since 2010. The majority of hazardous waste generated in California is identified as non-RCRA hazardous waste, meaning that it's identified as hazardous waste in California, but not federally. Soil, waste and mixed oil, and other inorganic solid waste are the top 3 hazardous waste streams consistently generated year over year and comprise about 65% of the hazardous waste generated between the years 2010 and 2021. And lastly, the amount of hazardous waste generated in California has been decreasing over time. And that's what's shown up on this figure. It's decreased by about 40% since the year 2000. It's long been the goal of DTSC to manage California's waste in state rather than incentivizing California generators to dispose of hazardous waste out of state or finding illegal means of management. Now, a large portion of hazardous waste is treated on site by generators. Now, if a hazardous waste is not managed on site, it gets shipped off site. Now, there's about 1.5 million tons of waste managed off site annually. About half is shipped out of the state each year. The chart here represents the destinations of the waste shipped off site between 2010 and 2021. Now, just over half, about 53% of the waste generated in California was managed in California over this time period, but the remainder was shipped out of state. The distance between the generators and the destination of facilities averaged about 500 miles. I'm going to switch into the Hazardous Waste Management Plan summary. Now, the purpose of the plan is to be a guide and a source of information that can be used to inform hazardous waste management programs for many entities. This can range from a city, a county, other state agencies, CUPAs, Certified Unified Program Agencies. DTSC's vision for the Hazardous Waste Management Plan is to continue to drive forward hazardous waste management practices that are protective of the environment and all Californians. The recommendations in this first iteration of the plan are stepping stones to a broader vision, which includes 3 parts: support of a circular economy, fostering sustainable management practices, and investing in research and innovation. The plan includes 10 goals and several recommendations. And DTSC currently has recommendations, or currently has resources to implement some of the recommendations, but others will require additional resources to complete. Go. Doesn't look like it advanced up here, though.
Can you advance the slide? There we go.
Thank you. Now I have the goals listed out here over a few slides, and I'm going to summarize each one briefly. Recommendations in Goal 1 include incorporating an initiative that our Brownfields group is working on called the Community Considerate Cleanups. It also recommends continuing the Cleanup in Vulnerable Communities initiative, implementing DTSC's enforcement strategic plan, and conducting an analysis of generators and surrounding areas. Some of the comments we received early on in public feedback is related to Goal 2 and was about the need for improved information sharing. Now, we developed Goal 2 with these comments in mind, and it includes recommendations that focus on providing technical and informational content and enhancing public participation by providing tools to diverse audiences. Goals 3 and 4 outline a waste reduction strategy that will allow DTSC to work to enhance the reductions that are occurring. Recommendations in Goal 5 are related to studying the possible impact of fee increases and exploring other sustainable funding frameworks for DTSC. Goal 6 centers on how hazardous wastes are identified. That's one of the most important subjects in the program. This relates then to how some hazardous wastes are managed in Goal 7. The hazardous waste management planning process has allowed DTSC to develop more data analysis capabilities for hazardous waste. We're planning to continue the development of our data analysis, and that is reflected in Goals 8 and 10. Goal 9 is related to the circular economy. Recommendations are to develop a capacity work group to analyze ways to progress towards a circular economy, to review extended producer responsibility statutes, and consider amending California's lower tiered permits for on-site treatment. Okay, I'm going to go a little deeper into some of the goals and recommendations, and to provide some examples of some of the background information. Goals 3 and 4 relate to the development of feasible ways to help support waste reduction. Since 2000, manifested hazardous waste generation has decreased by more than 40%. DTSC is seeking to bolster these reductions by focusing on specific waste streams rather than establishing an overall reduction goal. To do this, we will take a two-phased approach and target specific waste streams for reduction. Goal 3 is a short-term waste reduction approach. DTSC intends to focus on source reduction, recycling, and treatment for lithium-ion batteries and incinerable waste. Lithium-ion batteries are a growing waste stream. California is a national leader in zero carbon emitting vehicles. These vehicles have lithium battery packs that contain metals that could be recovered, and these batteries would be identified as a hazardous waste at the final end of life. There's also small and mid-format rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, and they're also a growing waste stream. These batteries are used in things like earbuds, e-bikes, and e-scooters. Now, currently, there's very little to no in-state recycling capacity for lithium-ion batteries. The draft plan proposes to create an interdisciplinary work group within DTSC that compiles information on lithium-ion batteries, like safety considerations, designing with the end-of-life management in mind, and how to best support needed infrastructure. The intent is to ensure lithium-ion batteries are recovered, reused, and recycled at the end of the life. This will help keep them out of landfills. Incinerable waste is the term we use for waste that is sent to an incinerator for management. This graph shows the incinerable waste generated between 2010 and 2021. Now, incinerable waste only makes up about 3% by weight of hazardous waste in California. So it's not a large waste stream compared to others, but incinerable waste is a good waste to target for reduction in the short term for several reasons. Most incinerable waste is RCRA hazardous waste, so it's identified as hazardous federally, but so it must be treated in a hazardous waste incinerator. There's no commercial hazardous waste incinerators in California, and none are currently proposed. And there are also limited incinerators nationwide, so capacity is an issue. Over the last few years, there's been a backlog nationwide at hazardous waste incinerators, and some facilities even stopped accepting hazardous waste designated for incineration. This has led to some safety issues, storage issues, and compliance issues, because this waste had to just be stored. US EPA just released a report that indicated the backlog has relieved, but they still have concerns. And the issue highlighted that there is a need to not be so reliant on these out-of-state facilities. So reducing this waste stream would really help to reduce that reliance. We're going to move from the short-term approach for waste reduction to a longer-term approach found in Goal 4. The long-term approach proposes formation of a focused waste reduction program, a waste reduction grant program, and a holistic pollution prevention program would be administered by Cal EPA. These recommendations are contingent upon additional resources and approvals. Goal 6 relates to how hazardous waste is identified and includes 8 specific recommendations. Hazardous waste criteria are used to identify hazardous waste. One of the main types of hazardous waste is called characteristic hazardous waste. These wastes have certain characteristics that make them harmful to human health and the environment when they're mismanaged. Specifically, these are ignitable, corrosive, reactive, and toxic. DTSC is required to evaluate the criteria used to identify hazardous waste to ensure that they're using current scientific standards. I'm going to talk about one of these here today, toxicity. And apologies, it is small up there, so hopefully you have your handouts in front of you and the slides are up there. And I'll do my best to read through this a bit. What this slide is showing is there's 9 ways to identify a waste as a toxic hazardous waste in California. This ranges from how they may behave in a landfill, certain carcinogens, if they pose a threat to surface water, or if they may kill vertebrates like fish. I'm going to discuss one of these methods here, the aquatic toxicity test method. This is a test that is done to determine if a waste may kill a fish. It's highlighted up here in the yellow box up on the slide. The dark blue box is the federal criteria used to identify toxic hazardous waste. And the additional boxes, the lighter blue, are what California uses in addition to the federal criteria. Excuse me. One of the recommendations included in the plan is to determine if this aquatic toxicity test is still necessary or if a better alternative test method exists. A waste can be tested for this criterion by placing some of the waste in a test water tank and introducing one of 3 acceptable fish species: fathead minnows, rainbow trout, or golden shiners, to determine if they're able to survive. The aquatic toxicity test is problematic because it is an animal test, and it has also led to overclassification of hazardous waste. There are businesses that have policies against animal testing or testing on animals. This results in them choosing to classify potentially non-hazardous waste as hazardous rather than subjecting their waste to the test.
We will have a public comment period after the presentation is done.
If we could allow him to finish his presentation and then we'll move forward. I'm sorry to ask you to wait.
Goal 7 is based on a legal requirement that DTSC is to recommend alternative ways to manage certain non-RCRA hazardous waste safely. This goal includes a recommendation to identify and evaluate different ways to dispose of specific types of some non-RCRA soil in appropriately designed and operated landfills. If the draft plan is approved as it currently stands, it would not change any existing laws. Several steps to this are needed, and we're in the first, which is to identify and evaluate protective standards. Next, the standard would need to be written and go through a public process like a statute or a regulation or some other form of regulatory action. No landfills would be required to accept this soil. A landfill would need to choose to accept this soil and receive regulatory approval from both CalRecycle and the Water Board. Coordination between agencies is very important because no one agency would oversee all aspects of this issue. Now, this soil comes from a few different sources that include cleanup sites and construction type projects. Now, this can range from a housing development to a cleanup project that uses excavation as the selected remedy, to the construction of a stadium or burying power lines underground for forest fire protection. We found that the soil was frequently identified as hazardous because of metals like lead, copper, and zinc. Some of the constituents are from contamination from previous industry activities, impacts from leaded gasoline, or is naturally occurring in the soil. Contaminated soil is consistently the top waste stream that's generated in California. We found that over 90% of this waste is non-RCRA hazardous waste. So it is identified as hazardous in California, but not federally or in other states. Up on the slide on your left is the year-over-year totals. Typically, it's about a quarter to a half of the total tonnage in the state. On the right side is a pie chart, and that's showing the difference between RCRA and non-RCRA soil that we see. As I mentioned before, there's 9 ways to identify a waste as a toxic hazardous waste in California. I've marked 3 of these tests, or 3 of these ways, in yellow up here. These 3 tests in yellow are typically tests that are performed on waste soil in California. One is required by the federal hazardous waste management criteria, and the other 2 are specific to California's hazardous waste identification criteria, or the criteria that are used to identify those wastes that are hazardous. Here's a table that provides some more information about these 3 tests. They include the toxicity characteristic leaching procedure, which I'll refer to as the TCLP or TCLIP. The waste extraction test, which I'll refer to as the WET. And a test to measure the total concentration of a hazardous constituent in a waste, totals. Now, if a waste fails any one of these tests, it's identified as hazardous waste in California. I'm going to start at the bottom and talk about the totals, or total digestion. This is a California-specific test to evaluate the total concentration of certain toxic constituents in a waste. This test and its associated limits were intended to address possible routes of exposure to toxic chemicals like surface runoff and contamination of land and water, direct discharge to waterways, and airborne dispersal. Now, if the total concentration is above the threshold limit, the TTLC, it's identified as a hazardous waste. Now, these other two tests are meant to determine how much of a constituent in a waste may leach in a landfill setting. The toxicity characteristic leaching procedure, or TCLIP, is required by the federal requirements. The waste extraction test, or the WET, is California specific. If the soluble concentration of a hazardous constituent in the soil exceeds the maximum concentration for either one of these tests, a waste is identified as hazardous in California. Now, both the TCLP, or the TCLIP, and the WET are designed to be laboratory simulations of how leachate may form in a landfill. In this recommendation, we're only looking at waste that failed the WET, or specific types of constituents. This is because California established the maximum concentration for this test based upon the potential for constituents in waste to contaminate a groundwater source used for drinking when disposed in a landfill without a liner. Wastes that are identified as hazardous because of other considerations like airborne dispersal or surface runoff are not included in this recommendation. Now, after we released the report, we continued to research and we conducted a review of multiple landfills that are already allowed to accept specific hazardous wastes because they are required to have certain protections like liners. The existence of the liner system and leachate controls should be considered in the determination of where it is appropriate to dispose of non-RCRA soil identified as hazardous. These landfills are overseen by multiple agencies, including two under Cal EPA, which are the State Water Resources Control Board, or the Water Board, and the Department of Resources Recycling and Recovery, or Cal Recycle. DTSC's review of the 59 non-hazardous waste landfills concluded that numerous landfills have been constructed in California that have a single or double composite liner and other protective elements such as leachate collection and removal systems, groundwater monitoring, air monitoring, soil vapor monitoring. Landfills that include these elements represent a different scenario than the one considered in the leachability test. Based on our review, non-RCRA soil that is hazardous only because of its soluble concentration of certain constituents should be evaluated for disposal in landfills that have these protective design and operation standards. This recommendation relates only to non-RCRA soil identified as hazardous because of the soluble portion of the waste based on the WET. It's not the total concentration. This has the potential to increase access to and utilize available infrastructure that provides protective management of these wastes in many areas of the state and decrease out-of-state management. This could also reduce the miles traveled for disposal and greenhouse gas emissions. I'm going to switch gears and talk about Goal 9. Goal 9 is related to support of a circular economy. The goal is to ensure that generators have opportunities for recycling and treatment. One way DTSC can promote recycling is to provide support for a and provide support for a circular economy is to evaluate incentives to drive changes to our current waste management systems. And I'm going to highlight two of these. One is to look at exclusions included in US EPA's definition of solid waste rulemakings. That's the title of a regulation package, and it's very regulatory speak, but I'll summarize it a little. These are intended to facilitate legitimate recycling to encourage resource conservation and materials recovery, while also maintaining protection of human health and the environment. One of the exclusions provided in this regulatory package provides a list of requirements for the safe and legitimate use of hazardous secondary materials. Broad term for materials that can be recycled or recovered. States may implement one of two separate versions. There's one from 2018 called the transfer-based exclusion. There's another one from 2015 called the verified recycler exclusion. Currently, 33 states have adopted at least one version of these two rules. Another is to conduct an evaluation of the procedures required for new facilities to determine if they need to be changed, updated, or removed. These procedures were passed in 1986 and list out what needs to happen at the local level if a new hazardous waste facility wants to submit a hazardous waste facility permit application to DTSC. The language in the statute related to this process has outdated references, and the required process has been difficult for local agencies to initiate. From last year, when a company was interested in recycling aerosol cans, the local governing body was not able to facilitate the process needed within a reliable time frame, so the company decided not to pursue the recycling activities. Now, the number of permitted hazardous waste facilities in operation has declined from over 400 in 1983 to less than 100 in 2021. While this doesn't directly quantify the capacity for some waste streams, it signals that capacity is not growing for any waste stream. The recent example of a potential recycling facility that I just discussed illustrates the concern identified with the current structure and its ability to support recycling facilities and therefore support a circular economy. Okay, I'm going to talk about next steps and recover that a little bit. Swati talked about it a little earlier. Today is our first hearing. Coming up April 24th is hearing number 2 in Berkeley. May 15th will be hearing number 3. Comments and feedback that we receive will be considered by both the board and DTSC before a vote that is scheduled currently to be held in July. To sum up, California's Hazardous Waste Management Plan is a comprehensive planning guide to protect California communities and from environmental harm through ongoing advancement of the state's complex hazardous waste management system. The release of this draft plan marks the next stage of discussions around the modernization of California's hazardous waste management systems. The plan is rooted in extensive findings from the 2023 Hazardous Waste Management Report, robust public engagement and feedback, as well as current science, data, and best practices. The public will have several opportunities to provide additional feedback before the 2025 plan is made final. And as required by SB 158, A new plan will be released every 3 years. This will allow California's hazardous waste management to adapt to changes in societal waste streams, innovations in science and technology, and resources. I want to thank you all for the attention today and for being here. And with that, I will go ahead and close and open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for being here in person. The way our format will work is we'll have board discussion and then public comment. There are 35 people in the room who've signed up to comment, and we're going to take you first in the order of the little card you received for 2 minutes after board discussion. And then we will turn to commenters on Zoom. We have over 107 participants on Zoom, but that is typical for our board meetings to have a large contingent participating remotely. We don't yet know how many of those may wish to comment. So we're going to manage our time well, and I'd like to start with board discussion. Go ahead, Ingrid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm eager to hear from the audience today, and I think I did mention some of my concerns early on. The one thing that keeps coming up for me, though, and I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, is kind of where you landed with the capacity question, that we have a reducing number of facilities in the state, but we actually don't know how much capacity that equates to. I think that's a really important question to know in order to guide, like, even define the problem statement, both for total capacity in the state as well as for various waste streams. And so to me, because the reduction in facilities could be, well, it's likely due to consolidation, I actually don't know that we can even say that there is a reduced capacity in the state if we haven't kind of done that analysis. So to me, to kind of be talking about solutions based on this kind of sense that we have less capacity is, seems like it's not being driven by data that could be available and assessed. So that's just one additional thing I wanted to know, but I am eager to hear from the public.
Thank you. Board Member Bhatia?
Thank you for the presentation. Ryan, I recognize that you had to condense the content of the plan. Can you give us an overview of the source reduction related aspects that you expect to achieve through the plan? And then also what impact you think might be driven if those actions were to be implemented?
Sure. It relates to the kind of two-phase waste reduction approach. In the first, we've identified 2 waste streams, the lithium-ion batteries and incinerable waste. Source reduction is reducing waste at the source before it's generated. Recycling is likely going to be the approach for lithium-ion batteries because they're already there, and the materials can be recovered. So that wouldn't be true source reduction. But in incinerable waste, that's where that comes into play. What we're looking to do there is first do a review of generators, understand the waste streams. Incinerable waste is a pretty broad term, and it covers a number of different waste codes. We use waste codes to identify waste and track them. Within those codes, they come from different industries. It's kind of based upon what the waste may be, if it's a characteristic waste or if it's listed or it has a number of particulars. And it could be a large number of companies or industries. So we're looking at going there and looking for ways and processes to learn more about them. DTSC in 2008 to 2010, kind of the expertise that had been developed in hazardous waste generation centered in DTSC was kind of spread out and kind of lost over time. So we have to rebuild some of that and relearn information about waste generation. And we want to start with this waste stream for the reasons I discussed earlier. That will allow us to go and look at the processes. they're going to be different. And just because just because a generator might be from one industry or the same industry, doesn't mean that their processes are the same. There's also differences between large quantity generators and small quantity generators. Different factors come into play, different types of potential waste streams, different approaches. We need to look at lower tier permits. That plays into it. Source reduction is changing processes, and if you can't do that, you try and recycle, and if you can't do that, you try and treat. So it doesn't end up going to a disposal facility. If something that can't be reduced at the source, and a generator will have to get a permit to treat it, try and treat it on site in California. Those permits and are allow for certain or specific types of technologies for certain types of waste, and they haven't really been updated in quite some time. And so that's one piece of it that we want to look at, is what technologies are out there that are not being used. Are they even allowed under the current system to be used, or do we have to amend the regulations to add those in so generators can use them? And that's another part of it. As we go through this evaluation, it'll allow us to better see where these generators are located. And that way we can look and start to compare, okay, these generators are included in these communities, and we can go and begin to target disadvantaged communities or other types of communities where a concentration of generators might be. Those are things that we're looking at right now to develop our approach. We're looking at leveraging the next plan or the next report which is due next year, to really start to drive that.
Thank you. One more question. In your opening, you talked about how there has been a long-standing goal within DTSC to manage California's waste within California. Can you speak to where that's coming from? Where is it grounded? Is it in a strategic plan or a mandate? Bring us up to speed on the history, please.
Yeah. The earliest reference I've seen to it is in the 1989 Capacity Assurance Plan. And it describes that as California's approach. It was based upon some other requirements for capacity assurance. That function of the department actually it was moved into what was the pollution prevention program. And that was who was doing that work. And then when that group kind of spun off and was moved over into SCP, that work stopped. The other reference to it is in California Health and Safety Code. It's in our statutes, our laws. 25-179.1 is written in there that it is the intent to ensure that waste can be managed in state, that they're not forced to go out of state and burden other jurisdictions. There is a third reference to it from a governor's. I can provide that third reference. I don't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but yeah, there was three references then.
Thank you. We'll follow up, and it'll be good for us to understand those references and see if that is we hold that to be true today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually interested in hearing from the community first before I give further comments and questions.
We'll do our best with the time we have today. We may have to carry some of the board discussion into our next meeting. Is there anything further that a board member wishes to say before we turn to public comment? Very well. You've been so patient, and thank you. With that, Courtney, let's begin our public comment. We're going to take public comment of 2 minutes apiece to ensure that we can hear everyone. We appreciate those of you who've made it possible to be here today. If you would like, at Courtney's direction, we'll probably ask you to line up in groups of 5, like 1 through 5. I don't want anybody standing for a long time if they don't wish to. So Courtney, do you want to lead us off with the public comment period?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Yes, so we're going to start with our in-person attendees first. Hopefully you received a number when you came in. If you did not, please raise your hand and we'll have Marcus pass out a number to you. So for those that received numbers 1 through 5, I'm going to ask number 1 to go ahead and step up to the podium, and numbers 2 through 5 to start lining up on the black X located in the aisle. We can start lining up there. We ask that your comments be no longer than 2 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen. I will also give you a 15-second warning. When your time is up, I will hold this red cue card up and I will ask you to wrap up your comments at that time. If you are providing comments in Spanish, please let us know at the start of your comment. We will still have you provide your comments in 2 minutes, and then we're going to allow an additional 2 minutes so the interpreters can translate your comments for our board members. So commenter number 1, we'll go ahead and have you come up to the podium. Okay, thank you so much. Please state your name and affiliation, and you have 2 minutes.
Welcome.
Get my minutes back, please.
Now we can hear you.
My name is Brunette, and I'm with a group called HEAT for the Southwest Fresno community. And I'm speaking about Southwest Fresno. We're one of the highest poverty and most environmentally at-risk areas in the state of California. This has been since the 1900s. The first thing they did was they put us in a category of being the dumbest community in the state. They gave us Southwest Fresno 43%, the city of Fresno 24.7%, the county 26%, and the state of California 18%. Then they said that educational level is a significant predictor of the income and the ability to make healthier choices, including diet, exercise, medical care, and other choices. Southwest Fresno, 45% of the residents ages 25 and older have not received a high school diploma and have earned only 7% college degree. Then they said that we are Southwest Fresno. We are in the 90th and 99th percentile statewide for burden of air pollution, population, toxic site, former landfills, and environmental pollutants. Then they go down to say Southwest Fresno, we received an F. And they say Southwest Fresno area is some of the highest level of air pollution toxins in the state. We have a Hyatt Park, which is a superfield. They're now at this particular time right now, they're building on that area. And not only that, they also say that they are redoing Hyatt Park so far as they're making it not just you would say a landfill. They're making it as, let me make sure I have the right thing.
15 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And they're saying that they have redesignated it as an open space because it's on a toxic site. We're trying to figure out how is this allowed to happen in our area.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please step up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you guys again. This is Miguel with the Unidos Network, Inc. I wanted to see what you guys can do. I really wanted to thank you guys about the decision you made earlier with regards to the permit process, but maybe we can see some of that done today again. And we'd like to see you go back to the drawing board with this plan. I think there was a lot of things left to be desired when it comes to this plan. I didn't see anything that was of substance when it comes to the cumulative health impacts that could affect communities like Kettleman City. I personally would really love to see the economic data behind some of these decisions. Like, I really don't see how it's economically viable to keep dumping on this community that has so little investments and nothing to show for the huge pollution burdens that we have in this community. And it's not just the landfill that's to be blamed. It's all of the pollution in our community that's putting us at risk, right? So I'd love for that to be hyper considered in this and to show in that plan that it's more reflective about the economic burdens that we suffer. I think the other burden that we didn't see is the effects of the value of our homes. I'm a homeowner. There's a lot of people that are homeowners in Kettleman City, and we've never really had any kind of study to show the crippling effect of that. I think with regards to the prior birth defect cluster, I didn't see nothing mentioned in terms of the birth defects and biomonitoring. I think it'd be really important to see any type of plan for biomonitoring within this plan. This is a community where we didn't see any of the mothers tested at the time that there was any birth defects. And so how are we able to justify any further pollution when we truly do not have the science
15
to back
seconds.
that up? So I'd really like to see more scientific data that involves biological testing of the community. And we have plenty of elders that are willing to do it in our community. We have some young folks. We have a lot of people that have been living in the community for maybe 60 to 70 years.
Your
that are
time
willing
is
to put their
complete.
bodies-
Please
So
wrap up your
Thank you
comment.
so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next commenter, please step up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. State your name and affiliation, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Cadena. I'm the co-founder and Programs Development Director of Unidos and lifelong resident of Kettleman City. I'm here today to make it very clear that Kettleman City has borne the brunt of hazardous waste dumping for far too long. The Kettleman Hills landfill is the largest hazardous waste landfill on the West Coast, larger than the Clean Harbors landfill in Button Willow, and yet, unlike Button Willow, Waste Management has never meaningfully invested in Kettleman City. Button Willow receives financial benefits and tax revenue support while Kettleman City continues to be left behind. This is unacceptable. For decades, my community has suffered from the health and environmental impacts of this landfill. We've seen higher than average rates of birth defects, respiratory issues, and other severe health problems. A well-documented birth defect cluster in Kettleman City raised national attention. This was not a coincidence. Yet there has been no long-term investment in monitoring or mitigation of these health risks. Hazardous waste releases harmful toxins into our air and water, putting our children, elderly, and families at constant risk. But let me be very clear, our community knows what we need. We want the resources we are owed for carrying this burden for so long. Kettleman City residents, not outside organizations, should be at the center of decision-making about our future. And to the outside environmental justice groups that parachute in to speak for us, stop. You don't live in Kettleman City. You don't raise your families in Kettleman City. Yet you show up at meetings like this claiming to represent us while never respecting or even listening to what our community actually wants. You challenge financial contributions and investments that would benefit our community because it doesn't align with your organizational agenda. This is not advocacy, it's exploitation. You're not helping Kettleman City, you're holding us back. We demand independent environmental monitoring, direct reinvestment of landfill-generated tax revenue into our schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. These long overdue financial benefits for Kettleman City. If Button Willow can get it, so can we. Kettleman City deserves more than just being a dumping ground. We deserve to thrive. Please push back your decision until independent biological
Your time
testing
is
can be
complete.
done on my community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next commenter, please come up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. State your name and affiliation.
Greetings, everyone. Pleasure to be here again. Mark Felton, and I'm with Unidos Network. We are an organization based in Kettleman City, funded and created or by residents. I support full transparency, full disclosure. I'm a resident of Fresno, but I grew up originally born and raised, but then relocated to the rural area and due to economic disparities. A lot of people have been displaced and pushed out to the rural areas. So if anyone knows Huron, Kalinga, California, we're not too far, just neighbors. And I've stood with, people for generations. I've seen the pain that was caused by outside entities profiting that are not even from the Central Valley while their babies suffer, the ones that are actual residents, and not having those economic disparities addressed and not having those funding for green transition and a green local economy. I myself am a certified field researcher, and I talk to residents of these communities and go door to door. So I hear their pains and I hear their cries. Please have a heart and help us support all of us. Also, I want to give a thank you to Ingrid Brostrom, who's there, has been vouching for us, I recommend to the Board of Environmental Safety, please reach out to Unidos Network. We're here to answer any questions directly from firsthand impacted members. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please step up to the podium. And for those commenters that received numbers 6 through 10, you can go ahead and start to line up in the aisle right now. We'll go ahead and start with your comments. You will have 2 minutes and then additional time for interpretation as needed. So please feel free to take your time and state your name and affiliation, please.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Oralia Maceda Méndez. Yo soy parte de la Red de
Señora.
Justicia Ambiental del Centro de California.
Sí, puede hablar en frases cortas para que el intérprete pueda apoyarlo, por favor. Si puede presentarse de nuevo, can you introduce yourself once again? De una manera corta, por favor, gracias.
Mi nombre es Oralia Maceda.
My name is Oralia Maceda.
Soy parte de la Red de Justicia Ambiental del Centro de California.
And I am part of the Network of Justice of California.
Mi comentario el día de hoy.
My comment that I have for today.
Primeramente es decir que los residentes que están siendo directamente afectados no están presentes el día de hoy.
And first of all, I would like to say that the residents are being directly affected and most of them are not here today.
Porque están en comunidades retiradas y además ahorita es el momento en el que están trabajando.
And one of the main reasons is because they live in communities that are far away. Due to that is that they're also currently working at the moment.
Y además también, yo no sé si ustedes saben, pero la transportación no es muy accesible en las áreas rurales para poder llegar a esta reunión.
In addition to that, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but also in terms of transportation, it's not very accessible especially for the rural areas to get here to this location.
Y lo que quiero comentar es que nosotros como organización hemos estado haciendo trabajo en estas comunidades.
And also, I want to mention that with this organization that I'm working with, we've been doing our work continuously with the communities.
Y ahorita en estos momentos hay mucha preocupación de la comunidad por los olores que hay, por todo lo que están viviendo al tener estos basureros cerca de sus vecindarios.
And right now, one of the things that is very concerning that worry us is all the smells that of the trash is being generated around the areas where these people live in.
Si ahorita ya hay un problema con estos basureros, ¿cómo va a ser todavía el futuro de estas familias si es que van a estar transportando más basura a estos lugares?
If we can see that this problem with the trash and other aspects is already affecting us, I ask myself, what is the future going to hold with us? Because it's already affecting the families. It's already been penetrated with all this trash that's been generated.
Algo que quisiera mencionar es que es importante primeramente ver cómo está la salud de estas personas que viven en estas comunidades en estos momentos, cómo está su salud y todo lo que está afectando para las madres que están teniendo a sus bebés y cómo todo esto está teniendo un impacto en la salud y la vida de estos niños.
Also, one of the main things that I want to mention, but first of all, is that we need to check and look into the health of all these residents, the families that are being affected, specifically the mothers that are having babies. What is the impact with these babies? What is happening for them? And to say what is going to be the health concerning our child as well.
Y por último, solamente decir que sí es importante, si ustedes pudieran hacer un tour por estos lugares, podrían darse cuenta de ese olor y esa vida que tienen las personas que viven en esos lugares. Gracias.
And finally, in closing, I just want to invite all of you who are present here that if you could, I invite you to come and provide you with the tour to all the places that I'm speaking of. That way you can feel and you can smell what's happening and have a better sense and a better understanding. Once again, thank you.
Thank you for your comment and thank you, Aldo.
Thank you. My pleasure. Siguiente comentario.
Okay, next commenter, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Okay, my name is John X. Mataka. I'm the president of the Grayson Neighborhood Council, also a member of Valley Improvement Projects in Modesto. I want to remind everybody up there that the communities that you're talking about letting toxic soil and other toxics into the local landfills are all pretty much all communities that have been overburdened by pollution and are in communities of color, primarily Latino and some Black areas. They're all on the Cal Enviro screen, which means that they've been overburdened. They all have health issues as a result of it. So I want, on behalf of the Grayson Neighborhood Council and Valley Improvement Project, I'm against putting anything in the local landfills that is toxic and that's going to further degrade our health in the community. I need to see a health survey about what you're talking about based on the health issues each community has already and based on what you think is going to be the outcome if you do this plan. I need to see what's already in these communities that have landfills. Like I say, and I live in the western part of Stanislaus County. We had the famous Wesley Tire Fire. We just closed Covanta garbage incinerator after 35 years. We have the only landfill. It's the highest Latino area in Stanislaus County. Our local officials will take whoever can give them the best rate to take in to sell us down the river to make money for the local county and the city. They don't give a damn about our health. So place this, I put the challenge out there. When are you going to place, when are you going to place this in a white, affluent community instead of going in all these Latino and Black areas? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next commenter, please come up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Thank you. My name is Tom Helm. I'm also part of Valley Improvement Projects in Stanislaus County. I'm also the coordinator of the California Environmental Justice Coalition, which is made up of almost 90 different groups from all around the state. Many of them are here today. I want to say something that was said earlier in this idea that we all want the same thing. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I'm here with folks that don't want one more particle of pollution in our communities. We're talking about a legacy of pollution on some of the most overburdened communities in the state of California. And I'll give you one little example of Stanislaus County. And the trust that we have for even the state of California. California in the 80s, the then Integrated Waste Management Board commissioned a study, the Sorrell Report, which said if you want to cite things like trash incinerators and polluting waste facilities, put them in rural Latino areas. Now, they didn't say Latino, they probably wouldn't have gotten away with that, but they said rural areas in businesses like ranching and farming, where English isn't the first language, where high school diploma or less. They even say Catholic communities. Now, to me, that's describing a rural Latino farm worker community. Well, guess what? Less than 2 years later, they break ground on the trash incinerator in West Stanislaus County near where John lives, the last speaker. That is an 80% Latino community, a farm worker community. That these are mostly farm worker communities that have grown into small towns over the year. And that's where the landfill is, because you're bringing the waste, you could take it to the incinerator or the landfill. So what we're talking about here is building on this legacy of environmental racism and environmental injustice. When you say that those same sites that were put in the places they were put, we're going to keep putting more toxic material on them. And more outreach should have been done with this, especially to the environmental justice communities where these were put. And I got to say one last thing, 2 minutes is not enough. This has been way cut down for community members to be able to express themselves.
Thank you for
This plan just came out days ago, and this is the first hearing that we're having. I haven't even gotten a chance to read it. We're having it on a weekday in the middle of
your comments?
A weekday in the middle of a workday where people can't even come.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Courtney, hold on. We don't mean to minimize the value of each person's comment. We knew that we were going to have a large number of people today in person, which we have been looking forward to. And in order to make sure we can hear from everyone here and those on Zoom, we had to come to a decision about a 2-minute comment period. We will have more hearings, as you know, and I hope you can understand why we had to come up with that in order to make sure everyone could be heard. And we are a guest here for the city as well. This is not our home. Please go ahead.
Sorry, before that, I also wanted to share that our next hearing is going to be held in the evening. We did hear that, certain times of days are easier, harder. We, heard it all. That's for some folks earlier in the day, later in the day, in the evening. So we're trying to accommodate that all with the multiple hearings. So our hearing in Berkeley is going to be held in the evening to accommodate folks that would like to comment after work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is Faith Bautista. I'm the CEO of the National Diversity Coalition. First of all, thank you so much, Ryan, for your presentation. DTSC has done a lot of this workshop, but my recommendation is information overload. These are the people that really don't understand the technicality, and I'm sure everybody's probably falling asleep or not understanding very good. So if we can summarize exactly because they care about the outcomes, right? They care about really what the true plan is and how will that affect them health-wise, economically, and the community that they serve. And thank you so much, BES, for doing this and for the outreach. And again, recommendation is like you said, they're very excited. This is very, very important issue to all of us. And we cannot take this lightly. I agree with the person just said that 2 minutes is not enough. There's got to be an outreach. I mean, local studies needs to be done wherever you're going to put the hazardous waste and really understanding what they are. I think the education here, and it's sad that there's not a lot of people that don't know about this. And National Diversity Coalition found out about this, and then we spread the word. And there were 30 people this morning speaking there in front of the city hall, and the message is, keep it clean, keep it safe. We don't want the toxic waste. So if you just look at those three, there's a lot of things that needs to be done. The plan, the draft, we appreciate that because I know that takes a lot of work to be done. But what's the community output on this one? It's really, to me, community, because this is what we're all about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Pastor Paul Zavala. I'm from Time and Destiny Christian Center here in Fresno County. And thank you so much, each and every one of you, for what you're doing here for the outreaches. I represent seniors, my mom and her 2 sisters who would have never known about this. They call them the Golden Girls, and because they're all over 80 and they're here. I represent some of the Latino community, the farm workers, hard to reach, minority, low income, and people of color. I've been a pastor in this area for 25 years. in Fresno County, and I've seen the damage, the air, and the water pollution that it can cause, especially for folks dealing with asthma, respiratory problems, and underlying problems, as myself, heart problems and diabetes. Friends and family members of mine struggle with allergies and breathing issues, and the more hazardous waste is allowed to accumulate in our families, the more this type of pollution grows. DTSC's plan to expand disposal instead of cutting down hazardous materials at the source is deeply concerning. If department agencies truly cared about public health, they'd prioritize cleaner industries and stronger waste reduction policies. Once we allow toxic soils into community landfills, we risk letting harmful substances leak into our groundwater as well as drift through our air. Even with so-called liners, soil can get airborne, and families like mine are the ones who pay the price. It's frustrating that impacted communities or those close to the landfills aren't given a real voice in these decisions. If the people who breathe this air and drink the water aren't being heard, then this process is unfair. Outreach is very important. We deserve a comprehensive study on how soil contamination affects regional drinking water.
15 seconds.
And how extra truck traffic hauling these toxic leads will affect our roads and air quality. Anything less is reckless. My appeal to the board is straightforward. Please take a step back, consult those of us who are worried about the health impact of this policy. If
Please wrap up your
DTSC can't guarantee the safety, then it shouldn't be approved. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, board member. My name is Dr. Tulu Tao. I recently retired from the federal government. I'm now currently the CEO of the Hmong Inc., and I'm here today to speak on behalf of those who have no voice, primarily the Lao American, Hmong, Khmer, Cambodian, and others in this area. Through my previous engagement with HUD, lead has and also EPA, I do know to some extent how polluted this area is. I also want to bring to your attention the fact that the Asian American community here is the second largest here, including Sikh and others. And there are a total of 2,500 small farmers and farm workers in this area. We need to keep this area safe because we are one of the largest egg production in the state. So we cannot take any more, waste and all that, but let's keep this area safe. And my last recommendation is that without the NDC, we wouldn't know about this hearing and others. So please, we would like to be involved, like to work with you and make sure that our people in this area are safe and sound. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please step up. And for those commenters with numbers 11 through 15, you can feel free to line up in the aisle at this time behind the black X. Thank you. You may proceed with your comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Nayamin Martinez with the Central California Environmental Justice Network. I'm here to request from you, board, to indicate the Department of Substance, the DTSC, to go back to the drawing board. Unless they put the specific guardrails in that plan of how are they going to be conducting fully environmental impact reports, public health assessments of how these hazardous waste might have an impact in these communities where they are intending to send more waste, we totally oppose this plan. And I want to say that we have been a CCJN listening from residents in Kettleman and Bottom Willow about what the hazards of having these toxic waste put in their communities. And now you're going to try to do that to the other communities where they are lucky to have a landfill because they follow the Cereal report and cite all the landfills next to our communities. That is environmental racism, and you are to stop that. And you also are to really, if you're going to fulfill what says in your plan of community engagement, unless I am feeling very offended that you have that statement there, because community engagement is not letting people who have of the Central Valley, where we have the 2 hazardous facilities and many landfills, one meeting in the middle of the day to drive from Avenal, Bottom Willow, and all these communities to come and do that. And then thank you very much, Ms. Sharma, for changing the date. But once again, white rich people in Berkeley are treated better than us, and that's not okay. This meeting should have been in the evening, and it should have been done in Avenal, in Kettleman, or in Bottom Willow, not here. So if you want to have robust public engagement, you have to change
15 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Buenas tardes. So if I do it in Spanish, is it going to be the same amount of time?
You will have 4 minutes to allow for translation.
All right, I'll stick with English. Yeah, can we start the clock over?
So again, in your remarks, if you could pause so that Alvaro could interpret.
Yeah, so I said I was going to say it in English, but you can do the 4 minutes up there. I don't mind it. Good day, Ruben Rodriguez with Central California Environmental Justice Network. I'm the Director of Air Monitoring Initiatives and Senior Community Outreach. I agree with everything that was said prior to my comment. 2 minutes is not enough. 2 minutes is given to us and we are stuck with decades, right, of dealing with the issues that communities are already dealing with. I just want to say to all the board that you guys all have a legacy that you guys will leave behind. Your grandchildren, your children's children, and generations past that will remember you and remember the type of decisions that you made. And whether these decisions were righteous decisions or whether the decisions that were done, and excuse the language, but half-assed. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, a lot of work. I heard a few folks mentioned about, we need some additional information as to what is happening to our communities. What are our communities dealing with, right? So I agree. I think we do need a source-oriented health impact assessment to see what is already there before adding more garbage to the problem. I also feel it very shameful that, you guys are way out here, so far away from these communities that need you closer to them to be able to talk to you. You guys are offering this opportunity at times where folks are not available, right? And then as Nayamin said, but you guys are willing to make adjustments for other communities. Why not us? Is it because we look a certain way? Is it because we talk a certain way? And I see you shaking your head, but when you balance out or you check the reality is that they were given something that we were not given.
15 seconds.
And again, I'll finish it off by saying 2 minutes is not enough. It's shameful. It's disrespectful, right? And again, you guys all have a legacy that you guys will leave behind. You guys can push this forward, or you guys can take your
Please
time,
wrap up
slow
your
down,
comments.
and listen to the communities. And I'll just add this. I find that very disrespectful. I find the fact that my brother is up here giving a comment and they come up here and basically pull him off. It's not right. It's not right. This is not right.
Thank you for your
We'll
comments.
be affected for way more than 2 minutes.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Salas. I'm here with Time of Destiny Christian Center, along with my pastors and some of our members from our church. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for all the information that you guys did provide for us. Some of the information that you guys did not provide for us is how you guys are going to prepare for such an incident, such as the 1980 chemical control explosion that happened in New Jersey on April 20th. If something such as this were to happen, how are you guys going to protect us from it? This led to a clampdown on hazardous waste contamination throughout the United States, sparking a fire that enveloped a 2-acre facility along the Arthur Kill waterfront and a toxic plume that flew over North New Jersey and Lower Manhattan. The fire fueled by hazardous waste reached temperatures such as up to 3,000 degrees. How are you guys going to protect us as residents from something like this? You guys talked about all the positive and everything, but what about the negative that comes out of this if something like this were to happen nearby? How this is going to affect not only us, but our children. I have a 6-year-old child who is already affected by the pollution and the bad air as it is. He has asthma that he's on, when it does happen, he's on treatments every 4 hours and sometimes has to miss school for up to a week. You guys aren't helping us with things, incidents such as those. I have a husband who works for a landfill. Why not instead of using the money to go towards another landfill, there's days where they don't have work. Why not spend that money on more classes for them to be able to save themselves from such things as this and be able to work more for them versus adding another landfill when these landfills already don't have work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commenters 16 through 20, if you want to start lining up in the aisle, please feel free. At the podium, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead and state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Bradley Angel, Green Action for Health and Environmental Justice.
28 years ago, people from frontline communities, urban, rural, and indigenous throughout the state, from South Central LA and East LA, Kettleman City, Richmond, Oakland, other communities came together to form Green Action. And for even longer than that, I've been dealing with DTSC, and it's like a broken record. Ingrid Brostrom, board member, will remember decades ago, we were talking to DTSC about source reduction, decades ago. You might remember that when DTSC used racially discriminatory processes and police violence to expand the Kettleman dump, in the press release DTSC put out, it said, we're going to do source reduction. Well, guess what? It never happened. Here we are again. 7.5 years ago, DTSC was required by state law and the Title VI Civil Rights Settlement, the federal civil rights settlement, to adopt regulatory criteria to consider cumulative impacts of pollution. You still haven't, not you, but DTSC still hasn't done it. So how the hell is DTSC proposing to dump toxic waste in garbage dumps, in violation of Senate Bill 673, clearly in violation of the civil rights settlement? Will you do environmental impact reports in these communities? Will you bother, and I'm not talking to you personally, will DTSC bother to actually inform these communities? Will there be hearings? And I assume none of that would happen. And the last thing I want to say is that, so we've been there, done that, okay? Where's the resources for the source reduction program? What's the staffing? What's the timeline? What's the timeline? How much money? Who's going to do it? And lastly, is kind of, and don't, with all due respect, you know, holding a hearing at night in Berkeley, which is a predominantly white community, much more affluent than many of the communities in the valley that get dumped on, that's not okay. It's good to have it at night. You need to come back to these communities here and around the state. So
please wrap up.
We're all watching, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, you have 2 minutes. State your name and affiliation, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Farrell. I'm the director of the Environmental Law and Justice Clinic at Golden Gate University. And I submitted a written letter on behalf of the National Diversity Coalition and Green Action regarding the hazardous waste management plan. And we'll probably do another one since the plan was recently released. So we'll do a follow-up. But my comments today are summarizing some of the issues in that letter. One is that DTSC is required to do an environmental health and an environmental impact and health study of the hazardous waste management plan itself. We heard today that there are a lot of steps between the plan and implementation, but the plan itself needs an environmental impact report. It's required under CEQA. At the program level, because that's the opportunity to look at alternatives, to look at cumulative impacts. Number of speakers have spoken today about the disproportionate burden that communities of color face from solid waste and hazardous waste disposal sites. That can be addressed in a program level document that cannot be addressed at a local level, and local governments should not be the sole environmental investigators of contamination from toxics in the state. Also, I would say that there is a significant impact from placing non-RIC or contaminated soil in solid waste landfills. The requirements for solid waste landfills in terms of liners, in terms of financial assurances, in terms of leachate collection systems, in terms of future deed restrictions are similar but different from hazardous waste landfills, and that needs to be explained and investigated before suggested as an alternative management strategy. And there's legal requirements that those strategies be just as protective, but there's no assurance that they are. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Aguirre. I'm a resident from the community of Avenel, the community that my members in the community would be most impacted by the decision and would have really benefited by more outreach to be able to be present here at the meeting and to actually participate. Right now, we have members of our community that are watching from their front window, garbage being dumped. they're smelling the smells that are coming from the landfill. It's hundreds, not even a mile away from their homes. And we are talking about retired farm workers that in the 80s, when they purchased the home, were making, the minimum wage was less than $4 an hour. That home was built off of blood and sweat. And to think that that was their American dream, was to have a home that they can raise their family in, to sit there and just have garbage right outside your window, smelling huge rodents. You wake up in the morning and there's rats, big rats. We're not talking field mice, we're talking rats. That's the concern that my community has to deal with on a daily basis. And now this plan wants to bring hazardous waste to the municipal landfill that is already a burden to our community. And which could also, we're neighboring communities to Kettleman, to Coalinga, to Huron, all rural communities that already are disadvantaged and would not benefit from a plan like this. We ask that you guys take a step back and come and visit these communities. Talk to the people. See how it really affects them. It's great. We see people in affluent communities like Calabasas with signs saying, we don't want your toxic waste. Send it to Kettleman or Button Willow. Why are
Please wrap up your comments.
Why are our communities the ones that need that? Please take a step back, come visit us, come learn about us, and then make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please step up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, my name is Gloria Perneta, and I am a representative of Time and Destiny Christian Worship Center, and I'm kind of grieved that I didn't know about this sooner. My profession, I am a piano instructor, but this really grieves me that I didn't know about this sooner, and all of this information has been dumped on me. April 26, 1986, I would hope you guys all know what that date is in history. I believe in history is really important. The Chernobyl incident in Ukraine. Something that was totally preventable in every way, shape, and form. By design was flawed. One of the reactors exploded, and it was totally preventable. And it has ruined their local ecosystem for hundreds of miles. And there was protocols and propositions that were in place, and yet those were ignored. And yet, if the people knew back then what the repercussions were economically and all of that, they would have probably had an outrage of that. Now, if something like this can be prevented from being built in our central valleys that are so rich and full of life and food and produce and all these things, like these, there should be a lot more farmers here, and they're not. I'm grieved. And I hope that you would consider that situation, even though that is miles away from here, that can possibly happen here in our central valleys that make our air worse, that make our quality of life poor and unlivable. I pray and hope that you would see the damage that can possibly be done by the RCRA, the non-RCRA soils that we don't even know how to deal with that because California doesn't have a regulation on how to process those non-soluble things. How are we going to have a proposition of, I don't even know what half of this means and what kind of things that we have to take in action to properly take these things out.
Comment.
Please.
Thank you for your comments. While the next commenter steps up to the podium, can we please have numbers 21 through 25 line up in the aisle behind the black X on the ground? Thank you. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, my name is Viviana Covarrubias. This is Gideon. I am the worship director and secretary of Time and Destiny Christian Center. I just came up to say that, I lived and grew up here in the Central Valley, and I have asthma and a lot of respiratory issues since the age of 5. I did grow up in and out of hospitals. I thank God for this, the Valley Children's Hospital, for saving my life multiple times. The air pollution and from the dirt affected me greatly. And my biggest fear in having a child was to pass those diseases on and to have him breathe the same air. And it is very important that our small communities don't get overlooked, because Fresno and Clovis and everywhere, the big cities won't get these places. I feel that the small cities will be affected greatly. And I believe that our farmers and our people that work very hard to keep our produce safe and to feed us. And it's been very hard as a mom and to worry about air quality for my child, not wanting to go outside. And I think that if we have landfills, or just you're destroying our natural environment that we have here in the Central Valley. And I plead with you guys, please, please be very cautious. Fresno has given so much already, and we're feeding the rest of the world. So please be cautious while making decisions about our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name's Carl Cobrubius. I'm one of the pastors at Time of Destiny Church. And first thing I would like to say is I want to commend all of you here today, having this public forum, the transparency, seeing the presentation, very impressive scientific studies. Those are all positive things. And the different organizations represented, BES, DTSC, EPA, these are government officials responding to their people, which is a very, very good thing. So I don't have negative comments in that regard. So my perspective as a pastor is a little bit unique. I don't know a lot about environmentalist ideas. I would not consider myself an environmentalist. What I consider myself is I'm pro-people. I love people. I work with people. I'm pro-family, and I'm pro-fairness. Now, when I study the Bible is what shapes my worldview. That tells us don't have partiality between people. In other words, people that are poor, they're just as important as people that are rich. People that don't speak English, they're just as important as people that are educated, okay? So one of the questions I have as a person who doesn't know about these issues is, why is the Central Valley and the San Joaquin Valley always the place where there's toxic waste dumped? Why don't you ever see an issue like, we're going to make a new toxic waste dump in Napa Valley or La Jolla or Brentwood? Why would we never ever see that? Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious, because this is an area that has, sparse population, very weak politically, maybe no money. But I want to bring that to your attention is that from my perspective, people are important. There's no such thing as an unimportant person. There's no such thing. And someday we'll all be judged on how we handle issues that we face every day in life. But that's the only thing I would like to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Pastor. Please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Bianca Franklin, and I'm with Time of Destiny Church. First, I want to thank Ryan for your presentation, and I'd like to thank the board for being here. My first concern is the soil. You had mentioned that soil was the biggest contaminant. And with that, it'd be the resolution that we have in treating the soil. I know that there had been an issue with West Modesto and that being capped over with cement. With the soil being the biggest contaminant, I would hope that there would be a solution with that. I know that, with a lot of GMOs, our products being GMO'd, and that already being a concern, I hope that we can get treatment for our soil rather than just covering up the issue. I also hope that our communities would have more awareness, as mentioned, and as well as the EV solution, that the EV vehicles and the lithium ion, that they're not just disposed of in the landfills, that we can also find a solution for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
My name is David Martinez. I'm with Time and Destiny Church,
and I want to thank you for all giving us this opportunity to speak. I'm also a Gulf War veteran, and I have firsthand experience on hazardous materials and chemicals and what it can do. During my service in combat, I was exposed to burn pits, oil fires, chemical agents, pesticides, depleted uranium. I have many health issues, and if it wasn't for the fight, and I thank the Honorable Congressman Jim Costa for help, I got my benefits, I've got my health care at the VA. I served willingly and I served freely out of my own choice, but these people that might be affected may not have a choice, and that concerns me, being a veteran of this country. That we may choose to take the cheap route and dump these hazardous chemicals on the poor. And again, they didn't have a choice. I gave willingly and freely. I ask that we study the long-term health effects. Like veterans, it took a long time, it was a long fight, but I've got mine. I have a lot of health issues. What's going to be the cost in the future for these people if they're exposed to hazardous through the drinking water or through the air? I ask that we put that calculation when we make our decision. Let's think of people over projects. Let's think of safety of the communities and the families that may be affected over gains and profits. We elect our officials to protect us and look out for our interests, not special interests. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your time. Please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Winola Lagunju. I am with CCAC, Central California Asthma Collaborative. A zip code has power. Dump the toxic waste in Kettleman Hills and Buttonwillow, not our homes and schools. This was a sign that was posted at a protest in Calabasas after stars such as Kourtney Kardashian supported a rally to dump toxic LA fire waste into disadvantaged communities, asking Calabasas city officials to not put hazardous waste from the January Palisade fires into the landfill. I am here to stress my strong opposition with this proposed plan under consideration. While responsible mass waste management is essential, this plan raises serious concerns about public health, environmental risk, and potential long-term consequences for our communities. One of my primary concerns is the potential for increased pollution and toxic exposure, particularly in communities already burned by industrial waste. Many hazardous facilities are disproportionately located in low-income and historically marginalized neighborhoods and continue to be. Approving this plan without stronger safeguards and further endangers these communities. Additionally, the plan does not adequately address long-term risks such as groundwater contamination, air pollution, which we are still behind here in Fresno County, as well as other areas in the Central Valley. Given California's vulnerability to earthquakes, wildfires, hazardous waste sites must be subjected to the strictest regulations and oversights to prevent catastrophic failures. I urge you all to prioritize safer and more sustainable alternatives to hazardous waste disposal and invest in waste reduction and cleaner technologies and more comprehensive environmental justice reviews that are not done in the middle of the day when people are working.
15 seconds.
Please come back when you're ready to listen to a community that has been crying out for help and support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. While the next commenter comes up, can I ask for numbers 26 through 30 to go ahead and line up in the aisle? Okay, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maria Reese. I'm the Associate Director of Outreach and Policy with the Central California Asthma Collaborative. We're a 501c3 public health organization, and we serve the entire San Joaquin Valley. We have a lot of services that provide really critical help to residents in the San Joaquin Valley and Sacramento now who have asthma issues. I'm here more to speak on behalf of myself as a resident of Fresno. I do want to ask what the methods of community engagement and outreach were when it came to this proposition. If it were not for an article that Nayamin wrote with the Fresno Bee, I would have not known about this. And as Associate Director of Outreach, I'm pretty well connected with a lot of things. So I think we need to work on that. I also wanted to talk about the asthma rates here in the San Joaquin Valley. So 1 in 6 children in the San Joaquin Valley have asthma, which is it's the highest in the state. So why are we still using the valley as a sacrificial zone when it comes to being a dumping ground. Just as my colleague before said, with the protests that these celebrities had about the LA fires, like why are they wanting to keep the San Joaquin Valley being the dumping ground? We've had enough. As a lifelong sufferer of asthma, and I'm going to be chronically ill for the rest of my life with various medications that I have to rely on. I don't want that to be the future for a lot of the children that are growing up in our valley. I also wanted to stress that even though I am a child of immigrants, I have the privilege of working a 9-to-5 job, and I was able to come here. So I do implore you to make these community meetings more accessible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter, please state your name and affiliation. You have 2 minutes.
Javier Collin with Time and Destiny. I actually worked at a place for 3 years with hazardous chemicals, and it took us 14 hours to incinerate about 1 drum, about 5 gallons of chemical waste. Oh, sorry. And so in the 3 years I worked there, I lost my my best friend. He passed away from the exposure to the chemicals. I lost my supervisor, and after 3 years there of losing my best friend and my supervisor, I also lost my dad. And so that was enough. It was time for me to quit. And I just now I have asthma. I take about 20 different medicines, and I'm all messed up. And we were in suits. So my question to you is, we were wearing suits, and it still affected us. You know, we had 3 or 4 deaths there in 3 years. And so could you imagine the people that don't have suits out here, how are they going to get affected? All these chemicals. And I just, that's all I have to say. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Mirador. I'm with Time and Destiny. And I was just speaking with a gentleman you just heard from. His name is Javier. And it was, when I was speaking with him outside, it was totally surprising. And I'm speechless, basically, hearing it from firsthand who's been affected by. So anyway, I'm here to speak about, it's outrageous that DTSC wants to weaken hazardous waste rules and allow toxic soil into regular landfills. Fresno residents are already dealing with the aftermath of the toxic disposal. We don't need even more hazardous materials dumped near our homes. As you can see, DTSC is supposed to protect public health, yet they are rushing forward with this dangerous plan without fully studying the risk of consulting impacted communities. If contaminated soil leaks into groundwater or becomes airborne, the consequences will be devastating. We need stronger protections, not weaker regulations. Our health and environment depend on it. And since I have about a minute more, I would say that learning from the Altadena, the Ethan fires in Altadena, I learned about it 2 weeks ago that the cleanup will end in January 2026. So it'll take a few seasons for it to clean up the toxic and all the asbestos, lead, and other poisoning. And you can't even eat the fruit on the fruit trees. They can't even rebuild until it's been done cleaning up. So that's 2026, January. So this is worse.
15 seconds.
So we just got to learn from our lesson here. So I think there's need to be changes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have additional in-person commenters? Coming through 20, yeah, I think I know a few folks left. So 20 or 20, between 26 and 30, actually 26 and maybe 32, 31. Okay. Thank you so much. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hold on. My name is Gloria Hernandez. I'm retired. This is what I'm living on right now for the last 5 weeks. This is Fresno County, south side of Fresno County. However, as a youth, I traveled all over the valley working and helping farm workers. 45 years ago, I lied to chemical waste dump in Kettleman City. I told them that we wanted to start something like that in Tijuana, and they let us in. I took the people from Kettleman City into the dump. That's when we learned about what the hell was going on. Prior to that, the people didn't know. I don't have faith in you all because at one time you all said Purity Oil here in Malaga was a top toxic Superfund cleanup project. It has not been cleaned up, and that was in the 80s. I fight for the 7th generation. I'm at 4th generation right now with my great grandchildren. I notice most of you are women, and I hope you keep that in your mind. Fight for the 7th generation. I recall Jesse de la Cruz saying the ducks got better care than farm workers, and lo and behold, didn't we find ducks with double bills out in the west side because of the selenium in the land, because they overplanted and overwatered. And then we see the kids in Kettleman City with cleft lips. Then we see the Avenel people telling me they got blue flies since they started dumping the shit from LA there. And then I represented a scientist who was at Chernobyl, who was at the psych unit. I was a patient advocate for mentally ill. And they kept saying he was paranoid and delusional, but lo and behold, his family verified that he was a scientist. I worry about your goal 9. You say you're testing about the fish, whether they'll die. I worry about those that survive and their offspring. The West Side County here is trying to build a storage for
Please wrap up
batteries.
your comments.
I dread a similar Moss Landing fire if it were to happen on the west side, because we are like a soup bowl. We're surrounded by mountains and hills, and all that smoke stays here.
Thank you for your
So I
comments.
need you to fight for the 7th generation.
Ms. Gloria, I know
Thank you for your comments.
sorry, I know you had a question earlier for Ryan.
That was
on
the question,
that was
is
it.
what about the fish that survive and their offspring? You're testing whether the fish die. I want to know, what about the survivors? Are they going to have are they going to breathe outside now? Are you going to modify them so much that they're going to be able to breathe in the air? Right now, I'm having trouble with the asthma. You know, and here in the valley, 1 in 4 children have asthma. And it hurts. It hurts, and I'm afraid it's hitting my heart. And I worry about the little kids. I always used to tell the kids in the psych unit, hey, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let it slide, whatever you did, because your brain doesn't develop till you're 23. And yet we got children living in all these areas. And it's not just those living there, because like I told you, we're in a valley. And all that smoke or whatever happens in Kettleman City, Buttonwillow, and Avenel, and even our land field right here in Fresno, we go out to American Street out by Kerman. And I drove out there recently after the floods because I wanted to see how it impacted our raza. And I saw all this trash outside the landfill because the wind blows the plastic bags, the wind blows all that stuff. And then I started thinking, well, if it's blowing physical stuff, what's it doing to the air? It was hard to train farm workers about pesticides because it's not something that was in their vocabulary. And I kept calling it the invisible enemy because you breathe it in, it goes through your skin, it goes through your eyes. You know, I am a victim here. And I think many of the children that are growing up in the valley are victims to the corporations such as the Kettleman City Waste Dump. And I think we need to start looking outside the valley. I think you need to really imagine where you're going to be in 7th generation. I don't have long to go, thanks to the damn asthma hurting my heart. But I've been fighting since the 70s, and I will continue fighting for the children. I hope.
Thank you for your comments. Next in-person commenter, please come up to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, my name is Katie Clemenson. I'm an educator and founder of Social Justice STEM and a member of HEAL, who has worked with teachers and students on environmental justice education throughout the state, just 1 year short of a decade. And I want to bring attention to the severe impacts of toxic waste, particularly air quality, on children's health and educational outcomes, as many of my comrades already have. My work in the Central Valley was inspired by Naimeen Martinez's creation of EJ 101, which she allowed me to adopt for middle and high school students. When we piloted that program, those students were 8th graders in Avenal who didn't know there was a landfill in their town. Now, as freshmen in college, at schools including UCSB, UChicago, and Yale, they use the failures of state entities such as DTSC as case studies of their lived experience with environmental racism. That is because the consequences of your decisions are a real and relentless part of daily life. The impacts of poor air quality from toxic waste look like their peers missing school because they couldn't breathe. It looks like asthma attacks in the middle of math class, or recess stuck inside because of toxic smells. Published research from 2021 shows the correlation between poor air quality and lower educational outcomes. And this is by design. Because of the Sorrell report, the children most affected by these issues come from low-income communities of color throughout the Central Valley, and it has been this way for decades, now generations. In light of this, I want to echo my comrades in rejecting this plan and strongly urge DTSC to mandate a comprehensive environmental impact report and ensure that substantial mitigation efforts are put in place to protect our youth and future generations from harm. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other in-person commenters who have not spoken yet? No? Okay. With that,
Courtney, before we go to our online commenters, I just suggest that we take a 1-minute break. It would be good for everyone to stand if you're staying, or if you aren't, then it's also a good time to make a little exit. So a 1-minute break.
thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We're going to take a 1-minute break and then we will open it up for our Zoom participants for agenda item number 6. Thank you. Okay, welcome back everyone from our short break. And Madam Vice Chair, we do maintain our quorum. And for those who are participating remotely, please note that your continued participation is acknowledgement that you are being recorded. We are going to continue on the public comment portion for agenda item number 6, the first hearing of the Hazardous Waste Management Plan from DTSC. So for those joining on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand on your Zoom toolbar or press *9 on your phone. If you have joined the Spanish channel, please wait for the interpreters to provide instructions. And then I will acknowledge each commenter by first and last name as displayed on Zoom. I do apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. So we're going to go in the order of the hands being raised. So Cynthia Babbage is our first public commenter. So we're going to ask you to unmute. So please accept our invitation to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to make your public comments. And feel free, you can also share your video.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Babbage, and I'm the director of the Delamo Action Committee. I'm also the coordinator of the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network. I've been following this process for over 25 years. We have stockpiled contamination in our environmental justice community because we do not want to send it to other communities. The stream of contamination going to these communities just doesn't stop. There is really no plan to stop it until the agencies say no. Can you imagine if they didn't come and pick up your trash? If it just had to sit there in your yard, wouldn't people make different decisions? Yes, they would. And I'm also wanting to say, as a white person, how appalled I was to see the news coverage of the arrogant people in Calabasas saying, not in my backyard, because it's in all of our backyards, but some of us continue over time to bear the burden. So as progress is being made with waste management, you simply can't, in an emergency crisis like the Los Angeles fires, throw common sense out the window and decide that the rules are going to be bent to allow contamination from one hazardous site to another. So to remove the fire hazardous waste, we're just going to move it to the same communities or to other communities. We really don't manage our landfills as it is now. So rather than get panicky and rush as if some kind of impending doom was happening, the doom is already here. We've been living it over and over and over for decades. So we'll continue to hold on to our toxic DDT contaminated soil and our overburdened community with 3 Superfund sites because it's much better than what is laid out in front of us. So keep working hard.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. We're going to have now Andrea Wald. Andrea Wald, we're going to invite you to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to make your public comment. Please give your name and affiliation. Thank you. Andrea Wald, if you're there, you can begin with your comments. Sorry, we're verifying Andrea Wald. Okay, we'll come back to you, Andrea Wald. Don't worry, we'll come back to you. Next, we're going to go ahead and invite Ivana Castellanos to unmute and make a public comment. You're going to have 2 minutes. Please state your name and affiliation, please.
Thank you. Hi, this is Ivana Castellanos with Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles. Thank you for today's introduction to the plan. This plan outlines the state's goals and recommendations for hazardous waste generation and management, which, as we've heard over and over today, has incredibly important implications to public health, particularly in already overburdened environmental justice communities. And I want to thank all the previous commenters for sharing about their experiences. The draft plan was only released late Friday afternoon, and I think it's unreasonable to expect that most of the public has had time to review the 50-plus page document before today's hearing, and so I request that the board hold an additional hearing. It also looks like the comment period for the plan is about 60 days until May 15th, but please clarify. And given the scope and importance of the plan, we think the comment period should be extended significantly to 120 days. We also recommend that the full draft plan be translated to Spanish to improve access. Once any changes have been made to the draft as a result of public feedback, the updated plan should be released at least 30 days before the board holds its final hearing and vote, so that the public has time to review this updated version before the final hearing and engage meaningfully in that hearing. In terms of the plan itself, I look forward to reviewing it closely, but from what I've heard today, I do believe that it should have a much bigger emphasis and more detailed recommendations focusing on chemicals regulation, on-site soil treatment technologies, and reduction of generation, so that there's less hazardous waste impacting the health of our communities. I would also like a future hearing to share more about Goal 1 and the plan's recommendations for promoting environmental justice initiatives. We look forward to reviewing the plan and sharing more detailed feedback with you all in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Okay. For next commenter, we're going to try Andrea Wald again. Andrea, we're going to ask you to unmute and see if we can make it work this time. Andrea, are you there?
Is it working now?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, wow. I unmuted before and I don't know why you couldn't hear me. Okay, my name is Andrea Wald. I'm co-founder of Community for Natural Place Surfaces, and I'm working to educate on the harms of artificial turf and to hopefully get it banned in California and elsewhere in the world. I understand the purpose of this meeting is to discuss hazardous waste and how best to categorize and manage those materials that have already been identified as hazardous waste. Because artificial turf lasts 8 to 10 years, after which time it ends up in landfill, is shipped hundreds of miles away outside of California to be burned, or many times is simply illegally stockpiled, and because it contains many harmful chemicals and heavy metals which are harming our environment and our health, DTSC should be looking into artificial turf as something that should be classified as hazardous waste. In addition to working on hazardous waste materials, I know that DTSC has also been dealing with candidate chemicals in artificial turf. I emailed a contact there, a copy of which was forwarded to the Safer Consumer Product Group, bringing up the harms of artificial turf, especially related to the toxic chemicals used to manufacture it and how they are ending up in our ground and water supply. I was encouraged that the response I got said that research will be looking into multiple candidate chemicals in artificial turf as potential priority products, and that a draft document is in the works and will be hopefully published by a pre-regulatory public workshop this summer. From Santa Clara County Medical Association, artificial turf and infill contains chemicals and heavy metals that are bioaccumulative and therefore harmful to humans and to the environment. Chemicals in artificial turf have a variety of biological effects and are known carcinogens, neurotoxins, mutagens, and endocrine disruptors. Some of the heavy metals found in artificial turf components are above regulatory limits. I am hopeful this matter is being taken seriously and will be acted upon in a much more urgent manner so that all of California are not harmed by the ongoing poisons contained in artificial turf, which till now has had no regulations whatsoever in their manufacturing, process, or disposal of worn-out materials. I strongly encourage DTSC to look into these harms and conclude that not only do the chemicals need to be regulated, but artificial turf also is hazardous waste. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments and thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, next public commenter, we're going to go to Angela. Angela, we're going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. Please accept the invitation. You're going to have 2 minutes to make your comment. Please state your name and affiliation.
Good afternoon. I'm Angela Johnson-Mazzaros from Earth Justice. The info about this plan's release came out on Friday, March 14th at 4:56 p.m. And this hearing was 6 days later, including the weekend. 2 minutes is not enough time to have the kinds of conversations we need to have. And this is not public engagement. It's for display. Ryan encouraged us all to read the entire plan in the report. I have not done that yet, and 62 days is not enough time to review this plan and provide meaningful feedback. As outlined here, it appears that DTSC is proposing significant shifts for how the agency deals with hazardous waste, and there will be significant impacts associated with those changes. Some of the issues that are obvious from Ryan's presentation have already been mentioned by board members Bhatia and Brasham. I'm very alarmed to hear about these proposed shifts in the classification of hazardous waste and DTSC's intentions for what they call source reduction and what they're calling alternative management of soil. DTSC has emphasized that the plan does not change the law, but of course it doesn't. But this plan does tell us that DTSC envisions changes to California's hazardous waste laws that will expose more people to more hazardous waste. Exempting waste from RCRA through transfer-based exemptions and recycling exemptions is not source reduction. It's a loophole that's meant to ease polluters and regulators' lives at the expense of the rest of us. DTSC is obligated to lead a thoughtful process for engagement around this plan, and what we have laid out before us is not that.
Please wrap up your comments. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments, Angela. Okay, the next hand that is raised is Giovanni Solario. Giovanni, we're going to ask you to unmute. Please accept the invitation. You'll have 2 minutes to make your public comment. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Solorio, and I represent the community of Cattleman City as well as Unidos Network. And I've been a lifelong resident. I'm 21 years old, but I've seen basically everything you can imagine when it comes to the detrimental health effects of having a hazardous waste plant just 3 miles from your home. I also live next to a benzene stripper that I never asked for, and neither did my parents ask for. My dad passed when I was just 4 years old of lung cancer, and my entire family has worked hard in the fields. And I think I'm really tired of seeing my community be affected by the detrimental health effects. And I'd say that just seeing firsthand what the effects are, I really hope that we can come to an agreement with Waste Management so they can invest in our community. I'm not here to protest or here to fight against Waste Management. I'm here to try to work with Waste Management to come in agreement and make sure my community gets the reparations that we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other commenters on Zoom that would like to make a comment, or those in the Spanish interpretation room? Interpreters, please let us know if there's anyone waiting, or please raise your virtual hand or press *9 to make a comment. We did get a request to read a comment submitted to us out loud, so I will read that now. This is from Deja Macaulay. I truly wish the plan had been released earlier. It was released late last Friday, close to 5 p.m., which did not give me much time to read it before today's hearing. I really wanted to be able to give meaningful feedback today regarding this plan, but unfortunately, I'm not able due to its late release. Given the importance and scope of the plan, I do not think this meeting should be considered as one of the 3 public hearings to gather feedback, and I respectfully request that an extra hearing be added to ensure the public has adequate time to review the plan and provide either verbal or written feedback. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay. Okay, last call for any public commenters on Zoom. Okay. And Spanish interpreters, can you confirm we don't have anyone in the room? Perfect. Thank you so much, Aldo and Jeanette. We appreciate your help during today's meeting. So that will conclude the public comment portion of agenda item number 6. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. There are a couple of procedural matters that our Executive Officer, Swati Sharma, would like to address.
Thank you. So I wanted to clarify some of the comments about a public comment period. There is no official public comment period, basically up until the board votes on this. It's right now anticipated in July. That may change, but we will take comments on this plan basically up until the board votes. So there's no official public comment period. That being said, we encourage you to contact us, send in your written comments. We're happy to do one-on-one meetings in person, via Zoom. We're happy to do that. We've also received many requests that, since the plan was only released on Friday, to hold additional hearings. And so we will be discussing that. We've received many requests on that. So we will be discussing on what an additional hearing would look like, when and where that would be. So please stay tuned. And in addition to that, we understand that having only 2 minutes here, 3 minutes here is not satisfying for a dialogue. So we will be looking at additional engagement opportunities throughout the state with the board, so that we can listen to what you have to say. So please stay tuned for that. We'll provide more information on what those engagement opportunities look like. I turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you to our DTSC partners and to everyone who made time to come here today. Board members had also expressed interest in making a couple of comments before we move on to public forum, once having heard the public comments today. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start. A couple of things that I heard today that I think warrant some attention. I heard a couple people talk about that not only the hazardous waste facilities in the state, but also landfills themselves are located in environmental justice communities. And I would be, interested in having an analysis of the vulnerability of those communities that host landfills that are subject potentially to this plan, as well as distances, like location-wise, because my sense is that landfills, might have the tendency to be even closer to residential neighborhoods. So I think having that information would be pretty critical. And then particularly, also looking at the communities that are around the facilities that are receiving the waste out of state. Because if that's what's driving the conversation, then I think, getting more details into the proximity and vulnerabilities of communities outside of the state, as well as, potentially in state, is going to be really critical to the conversation. Another thing that I noted was, it looks like a lot of the analysis is focused on, liners. There was a point made up that, while there are liner requirements for some of these landfills, the differences between municipal landfill liners and hazardous waste liners. So I think that's an important distinction to understand better. I also heard some mention that there is concern about failure, human error or different failures. And that resonated because of the recent landfill failures that we've heard about at some of our past meetings. And so I think, paying attention that we have just seen in our recent history that, even if on paper, it seems like, it could be safe. The fact of the matter is we have seen that landfills, don't always operate as intended. And so I think that's top of mind. Then the other thing I notice is I really do want to dive in deeper in terms of what the problem is that we're trying to solve, because that it hasn't been clear to me yet. And, I do understand that we have that contaminated soil is one of our largest soil sources. And I do appreciate the inclusion in the plan of the community considerate cleanups. But I do wonder if that is the problem we're trying to solve. Focusing on contaminated soil makes sense, but diving in deeper in terms of, treatment on site, bioremediation, on-site destruction, that also is another way of avoiding the transportation-related impacts, also taking it to Kettleman or Buttonwillow. So to me, there's third options out there that actually really reduce the impacts rather than shifting it around. So I would be interested in maybe digging into that aspect of some of the recommendations further, and what beyond just the community considerate cleanups might we want to dig in, including what resources, what would it really take to really figure out how can we do more on-site treatment of contaminated soil, because I think it is an important issue. And then with regards to, doing, I heard a lot of comments about the need to do more analysis on health impacts, CEQA, and things like that. And so, given that it is such a big departure and a big decision, I am concerned that there hasn't been more, assessment of the impacts of this. And I know that there would be a lot of process before we got there, but, in CEQA, you want to do it as early as possible. And so, like with the programmatic kind of level. I take that to heart as well as something that I heard today. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge the folks that took time to come and share their thoughts, and it's been noted. I wanted to really talk about three different areas that I really care about, and that is reduction and prevention. And I'm still in the document. I'm going back to what Ingrid just stated in terms of what are we trying to achieve. I would want to see something where there is a goal that we're wanting to reduce and prevent waste. Right now, it's not clear in the document of a stated statement. We want to reduce 20%, 10%, 5%? What is it? And how we achieve that flows from there, right? So I want to see something like that. Environmental prevention or not continuing to perpetuate the impact to already overburdened communities is also really important. So making sure that that is highlighted in the document, which it isn't right now. There's a huge gap in that, and it's really concerning to me. So I would want to see more, I would like to see that being stated in the document in terms of the plans and the strategies, how we are ensuring that we're not going to continue perpetuating environmental injustice by doing this. And the other one is health impacts. I think we heard it pretty clearly today from the comments that that is an area that is missing right now in terms of the areas that we want to pursue in terms of explore. What are the health impacts, if any? So that definitely is missing. And I'm going to be pretty clear that I am not a supporter unless there is further argument and evaluation that by us exploring municipal landfill as a solution to place toxins, I want to be proven that we're not perpetuating another level of impacts there. So there's got to be more analysis on that idea if we're going to possibly pursue that. I wouldn't even want to give it a clearance if there isn't further, deeper analysis, both from an environment, but also from a health perspective. And I'll leave it at that for now.
I'm going to go back to the comment I made earlier, which is ultimately the plan needs to establish a vision and provide a set of prioritized actions that help meet that vision. So if we hypothesize that the vision is to reduce the generation of hazardous waste and to enhance health of communities, then how are those actions that you recommend driving those two aspects of the vision? It's not fully clear. So to be very specific, if we use the source reduction example, yes, it makes sense from the research you presented about lithium ion and about, I think there was incinerable waste, reducing incinerable waste. But those have been chosen out of what superset of source reduction activities, and like how did DTSC arrive at those two relative to maybe hundreds of other source reduction activities that you might be able to take to, again, reduce the overall generation of hazardous waste and enhance health? Like that aspect is not very clear. So perhaps the next time we have this conversation, it would be good to understand and for you to communicate that more clearly. My second point is about, I think we heard a lot today, and we need to kind of parse out. We heard a lot about the lived experience, and we need to parse out which aspects of those lived experience we can directly impact through the hazardous waste management plan. It seems to me that there are some aspects that may be addressed by other parts of DTSC or by other agencies. And I believe it's safe to say that our ombuds will be following up with those commenters to make sure that the issues presented that fall beyond the hazardous waste management plan or beyond DTSC will get routed appropriately. So I want to call that out. And then the second other call out is something I heard today, which I hadn't thought about before, is prevention of kind of devastating outcomes. Is there a lens that we can apply on what might we do through the hazardous waste management plan that helps us prevent or plan for potential devastating outcomes? Thank you.
I wanted to say another thing. I think in the presentation, Brian, you mentioned, and in the document, there's reference to waste going out of state, and it's close to 50% or so, right? I would love to see, how do we, I know that the industry will say there's like, there isn't, or the cost of keeping it in California is just too much, right? So it's cheaper to travel and put it somewhere else because there's lesser regulations. And I hear that constantly. But how do we, so there's that. And I don't know if I agree with that, but how do we give some, how do we think about or come up with solutions in which we can prevent that the waste being placed in different states? What are some of the strategies that we should be thinking about? Is there a cost, extra cost to putting it somewhere else? And have the in so it's just an idea that I kind of been wanting to say it out loud, and I don't know what that is at the moment, but I think just saying this is how much is going out, that shouldn't mean that the way that when I hear that is, so therefore we should think about deregulating or loosening up our regulations to try to keep it internally. Because if our goal is to try to capture it in California, which we should, that shouldn't equate less regulations or making it easier for the industry to keep it here. I wouldn't want that. So I'm just sharing my thoughts on that.
This is the first of multiple hearings we will have, and I was struck by the difficulties that we face as two entities in effective public engagement. I know people were frustrated by the time limits that we chose, but we wanted to hear from everyone, and we needed to do it during the time available to us in this particular venue. I think that after our Berkeley meeting with our DTSC partners, as our executive officer noted, we'll make a decision about further formal hearings. But in the meantime, I'm also asking myself, what could I do to understand better the very real tensions and frustrations that commenters today expressed about something that is not directly in the plan's purview and in your purview and our purview, which is the state of municipal disposal or municipal landfills. There's so much tension around that, and the nuisance factors, the land use conflicts and the like. And I haven't thought through in a coherent way, what can we do to get our arms around that so that we don't just go down our SB 158 mandate of dealing with the report that you've prepared and the plan before us and ignore this sort of day-to-day issues. Someone living in Avenal or any other community represented here today, it doesn't matter to them whether it's a DTSC or a Cal Recycle or a local government entity. It's what's real in their own community. And so I'd like to have some further conversation about how might we try within the plan or outside the plan, what can we do as with our fellow Cal Recycle and Water Board entities to get at some of these issues so that we don't inadvertently, as board members have noted, in what we're trying to do from a hazardous waste point of view, we don't inadvertently make things yet more difficult at the local level with solid waste management. So there are a few other things, but if we can think with our executive officer about public engagement over the course of the coming months so that people feel that they are being heard and that we are being influenced by the input we get, that would be terrific. And with that, I'll close out this item for now. Is there anything, Mandy or Ryan, you want to say at the end? If not, we'll have more opportunities. And I thank those of you who've participated on this. What I'd like to do now is close out this item and move to agenda item 7, public forum. We are not on the agenda for the board's future consideration. After each board meeting, our staff share the action items specifically with DTSC and others so that we can be good at the follow-up. So Courtney, let me turn it to you for agenda item 7, our public forum.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you to those who have already submitted their comments to us in writing in advance of today's public forum. They have been forwarded to the board members for their awareness, and it has been shared with our board ombudsperson, Lauren Chandler, as well, and added to the official record. We will now open the floor for public forum for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, you can always submit comments and questions to us at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. All commenters will have 3 minutes, and for those commenting in Spanish, time will be doubled to allow for translations. We will start with our in-person public forum commenters first. Is there anyone in the room that would like to make a comment during this public forum? Seeing none, we will now move to our Zoom participants. For those Zoom participants that would like to make a public comment, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. We have one hand raised. Ivana Castellanos, we're going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. You're going to have 3 minutes to make a public comment. Please state your name and affiliation.
Thank you. It's Ivana Castellanos with Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles. And I just wanted to follow up. I forget at which prior BES meeting it was, but I think it was member Brostrom that brought up wanting to have a conversation around dry cleaners or brownfields from past dry cleaning sites. And I do think that is an important issue. So I just wanted to follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Are there any other public comments on Zoom? Please raise your virtual hand or press *9. And if the Spanish interpreters could double check to see if there's any in the Spanish Zoom room, that would be great. This will be a last call for agenda item number 7, public forum. Okay, received confirmation, no further comments and no comments in the Spanish Zoom room. So that concludes today's public forum, and I will now turn it back to Vice Chair Hacker.
Thank you. I'll do a very quick recap of action items from yesterday and today. Our executive officer and our ombuds have a few other matters to follow up. And apropos the comment that we just received in public forum, you will find in our minutes the commitment to have a follow-up discussion per board member Brostrom on dry cleaners longer term, part of the longer term look at the universe of contaminated sites statewide that it's hard to get one's arm around. If you'll indulge me, I'll recap yesterday's action items first. We had agenda item 4, the proposed metrics for the hazardous waste management program. We moved to continue the item and will confer with DTSC and take it up at a later date after we have further discussion. Agenda item 5, with regard to the DTSC leadership report from Director Butler. There was an action item for safer consumer products follow-up, the nature of engaging with the manufacturers. There'll be a little bit further detail on that. And then secondly, Director Butler was going to follow up on whether air quality data resulting from the Eaton and Palisades fire, whether that data was going to become available to the public. Those are the 2 action items I have from yesterday. Today, turning to agenda item 3, the schedule for facilities, the permit decision status report specifically. With regard to Clean Harbors, Button Willow, the board adopted the proposed schedule. With regard to Chem Waste Management, Kettleman Hills, the board modified and then adopted the schedule to reflect a January 2026 or later date. 2 corollaries to that. We have asked DTSC to come back with any proposed schedule changes as they become known at a future board meeting. and we asked for DTSC's outreach with OEHA within CalEPA, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, for further data regarding or information regarding their biomonitoring program. We have no other action items that I have, but we will turn to agenda item, our executive officer.
Sure, just to add a few additional action items for DTSC out of agenda item number 6, DTSC's Hazardous Waste Management Plan, hearing number 1. Board Member Brostrom requested information about calculated capacity of, and I wanted to get clarity on this. Was this just hazardous waste facilities or municipal landfills for capacity?
It was for hazardous waste facilities, but both total and time, as much as you can do in terms of also waste streams.
Okay, so total capacity for various waste streams for hazardous waste facilities in California. Board Member Bhatia also requested additional information about the mandates and directives that require California to handle hazardous waste within California. There was also yesterday, there was an inquiry action item, but we put it in public forum. An inquiry was received from a member of the public asking about the VSP ruling process and what that process will look like moving forward. And then we just received the request about having either an agenda item or more information about contaminated sites for previous dry cleaning sites. That is all I have. Thank you.
Very well. We're at item, excuse me, this is item 9. This is where we close out the meeting. I'd like to thank our team, our DTSC colleagues, our translation folks who worked so hard. This concludes today's board meeting. And in particular, I'd like to thank the staff from the City of Fresno for hosting our meeting, the mayor, the city manager, the city clerk, the Information Service Department, and the executive assistant to the City Council. Thank you to each of you. It was really a pleasure to be able to meet here. Our board staff worked very hard to make this work. Thank you to our CSUS team. If you would look on the screen, you will see those that we thank specifically. We appreciate your support. We are going to be meeting next month in the afternoon and evening at the DTSC Berkeley office. Okay. Would you like to show your slides?
Meeting held. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. Good afternoon. There were 8 action items recorded for DTSC during the public meeting held on January 30th at headquarters. The director's office has responded to all items. Next slide. Oop, nope, this one. Thank you. From Board Member Brostrom, the first item asked for the number of resources currently being utilized across all of DTSC's departments in response to the fires in Los Angeles. As of February 10th, 27 DTSC staff members and 66 DTSC contractors have been deployed at varying increments of 15 days and 30 days. Additionally, many of DTSC's support programs have contributed to the recovery effort, including administrative services, financial services, and legal teams, ensuring that the contracting process remains running smoothly. The Office of Communications and Environmental Information Management has been collaborating with other communication agencies, and the Office of Environmental Equity has been assisting in addressing inquiries from tribal entities. This item has been logged as complete. Next slide, please. Our second item is from our retired board, Chair Rizzo, and was a request for information about the current and potential impact of the recent slate of federal executive orders. The director's office responded, noting that the situations are changing quickly and that some items are not able to be addressed publicly at this time. This item has been logged as complete. Next slide. Okay. Our third action item comes from Member Bhatia pertaining to a request for information about whether the facility at Moss Landing has had any violations recorded prior to the fire incident. Executive Officer Sharma was able to learn that prior incidents have been reported, and this item has also been logged as complete. Next slide. The fourth action item pertains to the continued permit decision schedule hearing. Member Gomez suggested that DTSC present the public comments that are received on permits back to the public ahead of any final decisions. The director's office stated in part that after responses are finalized through internal review, DTSC releases the response to comments with a final decision, which reflects all changes made to the draft permit based on comments received from the public. This item has been logged as complete. Next slide, please. Our fifth action item, also from our retired Chair Rizzo, pertains to a request for data on any possible concerns that have been raised about unremediated orphan sites. The director's office responded to our request, stating that although they are unaware of any orphan sites that are not currently being worked on, it may take a site some time to be designated as an orphan. This item has also been logged as complete. Next slide. Next on the list, item number 6 came from both Executive Officer Sharma and Board Member Gomez as a request for a schedule of upcoming EJAC meetings once it has been established. As the EJAC members were only recently selected and are currently still onboarding, this request is considered to be in progress. Next slide. Our seventh action item comes from Member Bhatia, inquiring whether interest or penalties will be associated with DTSC's request for an additional year to pay back the $40 million loan from the Beverage Container Recycling Fund. The director's office responded to our request for this information on February 7th, noting that HWCA would be required to repay the loan with interest calculated at the rate earned by the pooled money investment account. This item has been logged as complete. Next slide. Our final item came from Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker, but was not tied to any specific agenda item from January's meeting, a request for clarification on the timing and requirements for permitting notices of deficiency. On February 13th, the director's office responded. Per California Health and Safety Code, Section 25200.8, any applicant for a final hazardous waste facilities permit who receives a notice of deficiency from the department concerning the permit application shall submit the information specified in the notice. The department may initiate an enforcement action against any permit applicant who does not provide the information specified in the notice of deficiency. If an applicant does not respond to 3 or more of these notices or responds with substantially incomplete or unsatisfactory information on 3 or more occasions, the department shall initiate proceedings to deny the permit application. This information was sent to the Vice Chair on February 13th and has been logged as complete. Thank you very much.
I think that's everything. Thank you, Court. Lauren, excuse me. Left side, right side. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I will make a motion to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second.
Very well. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. The meeting is officially adjourned at 2:26 p.m. Thank you.
Gracias.